In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to harness the power of Flutter and Firebase to create a fully functional real-time chat application. Our application is going to be a mobile app that's going to be able to run on both Android and iOS, and we're going to be using Firebase as our backend and taking a look at all of the core components of it to create a fully functional chat application. By the end of this video, you're going to be an expert not only in using Firebase but Flutter as well. So with this said, let's actually take a look at the application that we're going to be building and all of the features that it's going to have. When the user starts our application, they'll have the ability to log in using an account that they had already created. And if users haven't already signed up to our application, then they can provide us with a picture, a name, an email, and a password, and then register on our application. Since I already have a user created, I'm just going to quickly log in using their credentials. And when we are presented with the homepage, you can see that we have a list of all of the users available on our application that we can have a chat with. If there is a user that we already have a conversation with, in this case, let's just say, for example, Denzel, then it's going to pull up the chat history for us, and we will be able to see where we had left off and then continue our conversation from there. And in the case that a user we have never had a conversation with and we start a conversation with them, such as Robert, for example, then we have an empty chat history and we'll be able to start a conversation with them. So now on the other simulator, I have actually Denzel's account logged in and he's talking with George. And here I have George logged in and he's talking with Denzel. So let's send a message and see if actually George is going to get it on the other device or not. So I'm like, hey man, how's it going? Long time no see. And as you can see, as soon as I send the message with the power of Cloud Firestore, you can see that the message gets sent to Denzel and Denzel can see what the message is. Now I can say that I am on vacation, like so, and check this out. And now using the image button here, I can actually send an image message. So I'm going to select an image, and as soon as I click on that image, it's going to send that to Denzel, as you can see here, and it's going to show the picture of the account that the message was received from. So in this case, George sent it to Denzel, as well as timestamps for all of the messages, when they were sent, what the dates for them was, and everything like that. So with this said, that's pretty much all there is when it comes to the functionality of the application. We're going to be taking a look at using all of the major components of Firebase. So these include, but are not limited to, how to work with Firebase Authentication, how to work with the Firestore database, as well as how to work with Firebase Storage. And I'm also going to be showing you how you can work with Firebase Analytics as well. So with this said, let's get into the video and let's start coding this application. To get going with actually writing this application, the first step is going to be to initialize an empty Flutter project. As you can see, I've already done that, and I have the boilerplate code that the Flutter create command gives you opened up in VS Code, and I also have a simulator running on the right hand side of the screen where I'm going to be testing my application. If you are confused as to how to get started with the Flutter SDK or how you can actually create an empty Flutter project or the basics of Flutter, then I already have tutorials for all of these topics on my channel. So I'll leave links to them down in the description below, and you can take a look at these videos if you want to learn about how to install the Flutter SDK on your operating system or what the basics of Flutter is. So once you have an empty Flutter project created, the next thing that we are going to be doing is actually taking a look at all of the dependencies that we are going to be using throughout building our project. So for that, what I've done is that I've actually opened up Google Chrome, and I'm going to be showing you guys each of the dependencies one by one, and then I'm going to be explaining to you guys a little bit about what these dependencies are. So as you know that we are going to be using Firebase as our backend, then the first dependency for our project is going to be a package called Firebase Core. So I'll copy this dependency, I'll come back to pubspec.yaml file, and then I'm going to browse to the section which says dependencies, and then the Cupertino icons I'm going to be pasting in the Firebase Core package. Once this is done, another package that we're going to be using from Firebase is going to be Firebase Auth, and the name is pretty self-explanatory. This is going to allow us to implement authentication abilities within our application, and is going to be crucial for us to implement features such as login and registering. We're also going to be using the Cloud Firestore database. So for that, we also need the Cloud Firestore plugin, which is going to allow us the functionality to actually interact with this database. So I'm going to be adding that as well. And moving forwards, we're also going to be using the Firebase Storage plugin so that we can actually upload files to Firebase, such as images or videos. So I'll copy this, come back, and do the same thing as I've been doing before. We're going to be using an incredible package called -chat2, which is going to allow us to create a stunning chat UI with bare minimum code. And this is the actual package that we're going to be using on our actual chat page to render our messages and the UI. So it's an incredibly useful package and I highly recommend it. So we're going to be using that as well. So I'll copy this dependency, come back and paste it in as well. And as always, links to all of the resources that I mentioned within this video, as well as a link to the source code, can be found in the description below. So feel free to take a look at it if you're confused at any point. Moving onwards from -chat, we are going to be using another Firebase plugin, which is called Firebase Analytics. And this is basically going to allow us to implement analytics-based functionality within our application and see various analytics on our application. To change the font within our application, we're going to be using the Google Fonts package. So let's copy and paste that in. So you can already see that this tutorial is going to be jam-packed with a bunch of useful information. To show toast within our application, such as a user successfully logging in or as a user doing an operation which isn't allowed, we're going to be using the delightful toast package, which is an excellent package for showing toast within your Flutter application. And for those who don't understand what a toast is, you can think of it as a pop-up message that appears to a user when they perform a certain action, as you can see here on the screen. So let's copy that, come back and add the delightful toast dependency as well. Once this is done, we're going to be also using the getit package. And for those of you who do not know what the getit package is, well, the description here is pretty good. This is a simple service locator for Dart and Flutter projects with some additional goodies. So it's going to allow us to basically register instances or singleton instances of various service classes that we're going to be creating. And for now, it might sound a bit confusing, but you'll understand more about what these classes are and what they do and what services are within an application. So to achieve that functionality of registering services, we're going to be using a service locator package called getit. So let's copy that, come back and add this as a dependency as well. And finally, we're also going to be using the image picker package to actually implement image picking functionality within our application and access our devices gallery, and the path package, which is going to allow us to basically implement some functionality of retrieving path for different file names and stuff like that. So pretty much these are all of the dependencies that we require for building our application. So once I've added all of these dependencies, I'm going to do command save, and it's automatically going to understand that I've made some changes to the pubspec.yaml file since I have the Flutter extension installed within Visual Studio Code, and it's automatically going to call flutter pub-get, which is a command that's going to go browse through my pubspec.yaml file, see all of the dependencies I have, go to the appropriate sources and get the code for these dependencies and put that within my project. If for any case you have this command not running automatically, for example, you don't have the Flutter extension installed, then a fix for VS Code is going to be that you can come to the extensions tab, type in Flutter here, and then install the first extension that you see here, which is going to be Flutter, that's from dartcode.org. And this is basically going to implement this functionality within your IDE, as well as some other useful features that you need for Flutter development. But if you don't want to delve into that, then what you can do is basically open up a new terminal instance, go to the root of your project, and here what you can do is type in flutter pub-get, and this is basically going to do the same thing as the command that we had run before. So now that we have the packages within our actual project, the next thing that we're going to be doing is changing some things on the Android side of things so that our app builds properly for Android. And I believe that for iOS, we don't have to change anything. So to do this, I will firstly come to the Android folder, and then I'll come to app build.gradle, and here what I'm going to be doing is coming down to the section where I have default config, and I'm trying to change the minimum SDK version to 21 and do command save. Once this is done, before we proceed any further, what I'd like to do is open the main.dart file, which is within my lib folder, and basically give a test run to my application with all of the new dependencies that we've added and make sure that our application works as intended. So I'm going to start debugging it, and once the application is running on the simulator, then I will resume the video. Welcome back, everybody. So as you can see that the application is running successfully on the simulator, and I can see that the hot reload functionality is working as well. If I come to the main.dart file, and then where I'm passing a title to my home page, I can change that to be XYZ. If I do command save, the hot reload functionality is working as well. So we know that our application is working as intended, and we can move on to the next step, which is to integrate Firebase with our Flutter application. To integrate Firebase with our Flutter application, the first thing that you have to do is make sure that you have the Firebase CLI installed on your system. And if you're confused with how to do this, I already have a video for this on my channel as well. So I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. But if you're more of an advanced user, then what you can do is just head on over to this website. A link to this will be down in the description below as well. It's firebase.google.com/docs/CLI. And here you can basically click on the operating system, which you have, and then download the Firebase CLI for that. So once you have the CLI installed, the next thing that you can do is basically come to a terminal window, and I'm going to be using the terminal window within Visual Studio Code, and make sure that you're within the root directory of your project, and then type in a command which is going to be Firebase like so, and then --help. And if you get an output similar to what you're seeing for my output, which is basically a bunch of different commands that I can use on the Firebase CLI tool, that means that the Firebase CLI was installed correctly. You can also do Firebase --version if I believe so, and this is going to basically show to you the actual version of the Firebase CLI tools that are installed on your system. Then what you're going to be doing is making sure that you have logged in to a Firebase account using your Firebase CLI. So for that, you'll use a command called Firebase, and then I'm going to do logout first, so log out from my existing account, and then I'm going to do Firebase login to log into an account. As soon as I do this, it's going to ask me, do I allow Firebase to collect CLI and emulator suite usage information? You can do yes or no. This is just analytics information. And then it's going to automatically open up on your browser a window through which you'll be able to authenticate with the Firebase CLI. And here you need to select the appropriate account under which you're going to be creating your Firebase project. So in my case, I'll select the account. And as soon as I do that, there you have it. Let me show you the screen. It's showing to me that, hey, signing into Firebase CLI, I'll be like continue. And once this is done, I'm going to say allow for the permissions, and it's going to say, woohoo, Firebase CLI login successful. I can close down this window, and here it's giving me an output as well, saying that success, it was able to log in as the user that I had authenticated as. So then I can do clear, and I can move on to the next step. So for the next step, what we're going to be doing is actually activating the Flutter Fire CLI, which is going to be the tool which is going to make it very easy for us to integrate our Flutter project with Firebase. But before we do that, let's quickly go to our Firebase console and basically create a new Firebase project here. So what you're going to be doing is coming to a website called console.firebase.google.com, and then you're going to come to the point where it says add project. I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to give my project a name. So I'm going to give my project name of Firebase Chat App Tutorial, let's just say, and then I will click on continue. I'll enable Google Analytics account. I'll do default account for Firebase, create the project, and I'll let this actual process finish, and then I will resume the video. Welcome back, everybody. So as you can see that the initialization process for our project was completed and our project is now ready. So I'm going to click on continue, and it's going to navigate me to the actual dashboard where I can manage my Firebase project. So for now, you can see that there's nothing much that is actually configured for this project. So I'm going to minimize the browser window and come back to my Flutter project. Now we can come back to the step that I had mentioned previously, which was to activate our Flutter Fire CLI. So for that, basically, you're going to make sure that you're within the root directory of your folder, open up a new terminal window. To open up terminal on Visual Studio Code, you can do terminal, new terminal like so, and it's going to open up a new terminal instance. And here what you're going to be doing is typing dart pub global activate, and then I'm going to do Flutter Fire and then underscore CLI like so, and press enter. As soon as I do this, it's going to go ahead, resolve this package for me, make sure that this package is available, and then activate this Flutter Fire CLI plugin for me. So I can move onwards to the next step now, which is to use this actual Flutter Fire CLI and then configure my Firebase project. So to do this, all I'm going to be doing, making sure that I'm within the root directory of my Flutter project, is Flutter Fire configure. And as soon as I do this and press enter, it's going to start the configuration process. For the account that I'd used in the previous step to log in, it's going to go ahead and fetch the Firebase projects for me. And then I can use the arrow keys to actually navigate through these projects and select the appropriate one. I'm going to be using the one that I just created, which is Fitter Chat App Tutorial. And then I'm going to use Enter to select. And then we can move on to the next step, which it's going to ask us which are the platforms that we're going to be supporting. So in this case, I just want Android and iOS. So I'll use the arrow keys to go up and down. And then to select and deselect, I can use the space bar. So I'll unselect macOS, unselect web. And once I've made the appropriate selections, I can press enter and continue. It's going to go ahead and do everything seamlessly for me, making sure that all of the registration processes are done for the Android and iOS side of things, as well as all of the config files are created and everything like that. And at the end, it's going to let me know that the process was complete. So I'll wait for this process to complete, and then I will resume the video. Welcome back, everybody. So as you can see, what the Flutter Flyer CLI has done, what it has to do is going to give you an output saying that the Firebase configuration file was created under lib Firebase options.dart, as you can see, and that it generated the following Firebase IDs for our Android app and iOS app. So with this done, this pretty much means that all of the configuration was done properly and we don't have to do anything else. So with this done, what I'm now going to be doing is doing the final step in the configuration process, which is to actually just initialize the Firebase plugins and make sure that everything works as I had intended. So to do that, what I am going to be doing is coming to my lib folder, and I'm going to be creating a new file here called utils.dart. Once I've created this file, within this, I'm going to create a function which will return a future void. It's going to be called setup Firebase. It's going to have no parameters passed to it. It'll be an async function, and I'll open up the function's body. Within this, I will do await, and then I will do Firebase dot, and then I will do initialize app. But before I can do that, I gotta import Firebase from the Firebase core package. So let's quickly do that, and then initialize app. And for initialize app, I'm going to pass in the options property, and the options are going to be default Firebase options, and then .current platform. So it's automatically deduce what the options are going to be based upon the current platform, and this information is going to come from the Firebase_options.dart file that the Flutter Fire CLI automatically generated for us. So with this done, let's do command save. Let's come back to our main.dart file. And in my main.dart file, what I'm going to be doing is, before I actually call the run app function within the main function, I'm going to make sure that the setup function is called before that. So to do that, I am going to create a new function within main.dart, which again is going to return a future void. It's going to be called setup, like so. It's also going to be an asynchronous function. And within this, what I'm going to do is firstly call a function called widgets flutter binding dot ensure initialized. And then after this, I'm going to do await, and then we'll use the function that we have defined within utils.dart called setup Firebase. Like so. With this done, I will do command save. I'll come back to my main function, and then here what I'm going to be doing is saying await setup. So wait for the setup to complete, and then we're going to move on to the run app function, and I'm going to mark the main function as asynchronous as well and do command save. So with this done, that's pretty much all we had to do. The last thing that I am going to be doing is actually importing the Firebase Analytics package as well at the very top. So for that, I'll just type in Firebase Analytics, press enter. Now the analytics package has been imported, and then I can just remove that here and do command save. Then I will restart my application, not hot reload it. So once the application restarts, and if you get no errors, that pretty much means that the configuration process was successful. We were able to successfully initialize our Firebase plugin as well, and now our Flutter project is communicating with Firebase. So with this done, that's pretty much it when it comes to configuring our project to work with Firebase. And now we can move on to the next steps, which is to create the login page. To begin building our login page, I'm going to be dividing it into two parts. Firstly, we're going to be taking a look at everything we need to do to construct the UI for our login page, and then we'll actually move onwards to actually adding logic within it so that we can authenticate our user and navigate them to our home page. So to get started, you can come to the lib folder, and here you can create a new folder called pages. And underneath of pages, I'm going to create a new file, which is going to be login_page.dart. Then I will create a stateful widget within this file, and it's going to be called login page. Then for the build function of this login page state, instead of returning a placeholder, I'm going to be returning a scaffold, and the actual body for this scaffold is going to be a call to a function called build UI, like so. So now that I've done this, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is basically defining this function. It's going to be called build UI like so. And then I'm going to say that I will return a safe area widget. And then the child for this is going to be an actual padding widget like so. And then the padding for this, I'm just going to copy and paste it in like so. So now that this is done, let's define the child for our padding widget. So child is going to be a column, and the reason we are using a column is because we are going to be having multiple children, and these children need to be aligned in a vertical manner, and to do that we're going to be using a column. So now that I have a column defined, I'm going to leave the code as is for now, and let's actually integrate this login page within our actual main.dart file so that we can navigate to it. So for now, what we're going to do is come back to our main.dart file, and here for the home property, I'm going to be setting that to be our login page now. So let's do that like so. And once this is done, I am also going to remove the my homepage stateful class and the corresponding state class, as we're now going to be using it. And now our main file should just have the actual my app class as well as our setup function and main function within it, and I'll do command save. Now that this is done, as soon as I do this, the application hot reloads and we can see a blank page. That's actually our login page on the simulator screen. So we can move onwards to the next step. The first thing that I'm going to be doing is actually creating the widgets which are going to display our title. So for that, what I'm going to be doing is creating a function, and I'm going to call this underscore header text. And then I'm going to say that for this, I am going to return a sized box. And then before I do anything for the sized box, I'll take my header text and I'll add that as the first child within our column like so, and do command save. Then for the sized box, I'll define the width, and I'll set the width to be the width of the device like so. And by the way, if you're confused as to what's going on right now with all of these media queries and different widgets that I'm using, or how the actual widget tree is being built, and you're a complete beginner to the Flutter framework, then I'd highly recommend that you take a look at my Flutter and Dart crash course. A link to that will be down in the description below. And once you have actually completed that course, then this is going to make much more sense to you. So continuing forwards, now what we can do is actually define the child for our sized box, and this time it's going to be a column like so. And it's going to have a children's list. And the reason we are using a column is because if I show you our actual UI, we are going to have two different texts. One is going to be this bold hi welcome back, and then it's going to be hello again. So to do that, we're going to be using a column. Within my column, I'm just going to quickly define the main axis size, the cross axis alignment, and the main axis alignment to be the following. And then after this, I will copy and paste in the actual text widget like so. So the first one is going to be hi welcome back, and then the styling on this is going to be text style with font size 20 and font weight W800. Now that this is done, I'm going to add the next text as well, which is going to be basically another text which is going to say hello again, you've been missed, but this time the font size will be 15, font weight will be W500, and the color will be gray. So now that we've defined our header text, I can see that there's an issue with the actual font that's being displayed here as opposed to what's actually being shown on our screenshots. So let's quickly update the fonts for our application so they look much pretty and much nicer than what's currently going on. If you remember, at the start of the video, we had used the Google Fonts package and actually added that to the dependency section of our popspec.yaml file. So this is the package we're going to be using to basically update the fonts for our Flutter application. To update the font, I'm going to come to my main.dart file, and I'm going to come to the section where we have our my app class, and specifically where we have the build function and we're turning a material app. And on the material app, we have the theme property, and we're basically going to be modifying some properties on the theme property so that the font gets updated. And more specifically, we're going to be updating the text theme property on our actual theme data, and I'm going to set that equal to Google Fonts, and this is going to be the class that is going to come from the package, which is Google Fonts, like so. And then on this, we can select a whole bunch of different text themes. If you want to take a look at all of the different options that are available to you, then what you can do is actually come to a website called fonts.google.com, and here you can take a look at all of the different fonts that are available to you under Google Fonts. I already have made my selection, so what I'm going to be doing is coming back and basically saying that my preferred font of choice is going to be this Monster Rat, and then I am going to do text theme like so, and that's pretty much it. That's all we had to do. So with this done, make sure that you invoke this function, do command save, and as soon as we do this, after some time, you're going to see that the font gets downloaded and then the font gets replaced for our application. The last thing that I'm going to be doing is also updating the seed color for my theme data. So instead of doing colors.deep_purple, I'm going to do colors.blue. And this is going to make sure that my application conforms to the color scheme that I had specified before. So now that this is done, we can come back to our login page and continue onwards with building our actual UI. So the next step in the process is going to be these text field, and these are going to allow us to basically input information regarding our email and password. Since we are going to be using this actual widget at multiple different points within our application, and the styling for this is not going to change much. As you can see, we're using this actual text field on our login page, and then we're also using them on our register page. It makes sense for us to actually create this into its own reusable component and then use it at various different points within our application. So to do that, what we are going to be doing is actually coming to our lib folder and actually creating a folder here, and I'm going to call this widgets. And within this folder, I'm going to create a new file called custom form field.dart, like so. And then I will create a stateless class within this, and I'm going to call this the same name that I had named my file, which is custom form field, like so, and do command save. Then within the build function, what I'm going to be doing, instead of returning a placeholder, I will be returning a text form field, like so. And before we proceed any further, let's actually do command save. Let's come back to our login page, and let's actually add this custom widget that we've created to our login page. So to do this, I'll come to the very bottom of my state class. I'll say that I'm going to be creating a function that returns a widget. It's going to be called login form, like so, and then I'll open up its body. Within this, what I'm going to be doing firstly is making sure that I return a container with a specified height and margin. So let me do that. And then what I'm going to be doing is actually defining the child for this container, like so. And the child for this container is going to be a form widget, and we'll come to what a form widget is, but for now just add a form widget, and then we'll specify what the child for this form widget is as well. So the child in this case is going to be a column widget, and the reason for that is because within our form we are going to have a bunch of different elements. Namely, we're going to have a form field for an email, a form field for a password, and then a login button. So to arrange them in a vertical manner, we'll use a column. Then again, I'll define the children's list here. And here I'm going to say that we're going to add our custom form field, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So with this, I'll do command save. We won't do anything else. We'll take our login form. We'll come back to our build UI function, to the column after the header text, add the login form. And there you have it. We're actually able to see our input field for our form. So one thing that you can actually notice is when we click on this form field, we get this overflow error where it says that the bottom overflowed by 9 pixels. A quick way to fix this would be to actually come to our actual scaffold and then set the resize to avoid bottom inset property to be false, like so. And as soon as we do this and do command save, or you could actually wrap all of the UI within a single child scroll view, that's also possible. This is going to fix that overflow error that we were seeing before. So we can now proceed to the next step. So the next step is to actually update the styling for this form field so it looks pretty. So for that, what we're going to be doing is coming back to our custom form field widget and then defining some properties on this text form field. For the properties, what I'm going to be doing is basically setting the decoration property. We're going to define input decoration, and then on the input decoration, I'm going to set the border, and the border is going to be const outline input border, like so. And then I'll do command save, and there we have it. Now we are seeing a text form field with an outlined border. The next thing that I want to do is actually implement some logic so that we can actually show some hint text as to what is the type of data that needs to be inputted within this field. So to do this, what we'll do is actually come back to our custom form field, and we know that we want our custom form field to be a reusable widget. So this means that when this actual custom form field gets constructed, we need to pass to it what the actual hint text is going to be. Since we're going to be using this widget at various different places for various different use cases, and not every time are we going to be just inputting emails within this form field, then it makes sense that when we initialize our custom form field, then we pass the hint text, and then we can display that hint text. So to do that, on my custom form field, I am going to define a property which is going to be final string, and it's going to be called hint text, like so. Then on the actual constructor, I'm going to say that a named argument is going to be sent to this actual custom form field is going to be required, and it's going to be this dot hint text. So it's going to take the hint text that gets passed, it's going to put that within this variable. And then we can come back to our input decoration, and I can set the hint text property here to be the hint text, like so, and do command save. Then we can come back to our login page, go to the point where we are actually adding our custom form field, set the hint text property here, and now I can do email and do command save, and there we have it. Now we have a field that shows us email. So the power of this is, let's just say that I want to show the same custom form field, but this time I want to show the hint text as password. All I have to do is copy and paste this, and I can just change the hint text to be password. And now we have another instance of the custom form field, but this time it's showing us password. So that's the actual beauty of doing things the way we are doing it. I can see that there's some spacing issues here within our column, so let's quickly fix that. So I'll copy and paste these properties in. I'm going to set the main axis size to be main axis size.max, the main axis alignment to be main axis alignment.space evenly, and then the cross axis alignment to be cross axis alignment.center, and do command save. And there we have it. Now it's looking fantastic. So now I can click on these email field, password field, and I can add information within this, and everything looks the way it's supposed to look. So the next thing that I'm going to be doing is actually setting a custom size on these form fields, because right now they're taking a lot of space. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll come back to my custom form field, and on my custom form field, I'm basically going to be wrapping the text form field widget within a sized box. So to do that, I will basically right click on it, and then I can do refactor, or I can do Control-Shift-R on Mac, and I don't know the actual shortcut for Windows, but it should be something similar to this. And it's going to pop up the same menu, which is the refactor. So either right click, refactor, or you can do Command-Shift-R. And then I'm going to wrap this with a sized box. And once this is done, I'm going to set the height property here to be a height that gets passed in. So to do that, I'll do the same thing. I'll come to the top. I will define a property. It's going to be final double. And I am going to say that it's going to be height. And then I will say that it's also going to be a named parameter that gets passed to us called this.height, like so. And then I will say that we'll set the height to be the height that gets passed. To command save, come back to our login page. In our login page, I can set the height to be 1% of the height of the screen, or I should say 10%. So to do that, I'll set the height to be media query.size of context.height times 0.1. So this will be 10% of the height of the screen. And then I'll do the same again to command save. And there we have it. Now the sizing has been fixed and everything is looking good. So now we can move onwards to the next step, and that is to actually create the login button. So let's do that. I'll create another function that returns a widget. I'm going to say that this is going to be called login button. And then I'll open up its body. And within this, what I'm going to be doing is basically saying that we're going to be returning a size box widget. And then it's going to have a child. And then I can add the remaining bracket first, and then the child here is going to be basically a material button, like so. Then on the material button, I'm going to define the on pressed callback. So what basically happens when we press this button, and for now that's going to be an empty function. And then we can move onwards to the styling of this, but before that, let's actually add this to our form. So let's come to our login form column. Then after the custom form fields, let's add our login button. And there we have it. We can actually see that something changed, but we still can't see it. So we'll quickly fix that. So to fix that, let's quickly update the color for this. So to update the color, I'll set the color property to be theme dot off context dot, and then I'm going to do color scheme dot primary. So I'm basically getting the primary color from our color scheme that's defined on our context, I should say. So there we have it. We can see the button now. Now I'm going to add some text to the button. So for that, I'll define a child property. I'll set this is going to be const, and then I'll just paste in the text widget because it's very simple. All it is a simple text widget which says the actual text login, and it has text style with the color white. And there we have it. Now we have our login button showing as well. So the last thing that we have to do is actually add the link at the bottom of our page, which is going to be saying don't have an account, then you can sign up. So let's do that. To do that, what I'm going to be doing is basically creating another function, which is going to be called create an account link. It's going to return a widget. And within this, I'm going to say that I'm going to return an expanded widget. An expanded widget basically takes up all of the available space to it that it can within its parent. And then the child here is going to be a row widget. And the reason we're using a row widget is because we are going to have two different texts. One is going to be this not bold one, and then one is going to be a bold one, which is also going to have an actual gesture detector attached on it that's going to allow us to detect clicks on it and then navigate to our sign up page. So for that, we are going to be using a row because a row is going to allow us to put multiple children in a horizontal manner and align them. So the row is now going to have a text widget, and the first one is just going to be the simple text widget that's going to say don't have an account, like so. But before I can add this text widget, what I need to do is actually set the children's list and then add this text widget within that. So now that this is done, let's actually take our create an account link, go to the very top where we have our build UI, and then after our login form, we can add this function called and do command save. And there we have it. We can see don't have an account, then you can sign up. I can see that there are some styling issues, so let's quickly fix that. So to fix them, what I'm going to be doing is setting the main axis size on the row to be main axis size.max, the main axis alignment to be main axis alignment.center, and the cross axis alignment to be cross axis alignment.end, and do command save. And there we have it. Now it's centered and at the bottom. So now what I can do is actually add the remaining text. So after this, what I'm going to be doing is basically adding another text, and this time it's going to be a text that says sign up, and it's going to have some styling applied to it where we just change the font size to be W800, and that's pretty much it. For now, I can mark the actual expanded widget as a const, and that's going to be pretty much it. So with this, we've pretty much created the complete UI for our login page, besides the fact that it's not functional right now. So now we're going to be proceeding to the step of actually adding all of the business logic to this so that we can make this a functioning UI. To begin the process of actually implementing the login logic within our application, we are going to be implementing a service which is going to contain authentication related code within it, which then we can reference at different points within our application to log in the user or register the user and things like that. So what I basically want to do is create some kind of class that is going to contain all of the logic which pertains to logging in a user, registering a user, and things like that. And then we can use this class at multiple different points within our application whenever we want to maybe log in the user, log out the user, or get access to the user. The way we're going to be doing this is by using the getIt package and then registering a class, or a service I should say, within it. And then we're going to be using this getIt package again whenever we want to access this service and perform operations that are available in it. So if it sounds a bit confusing, do not worry. I'm going to show you step by step what we're going to be doing. And the reason I'm building the application this way is so that one, I can show you good coding practices and do how to produce commercial grade applications that are written in a good manner, and all of the code is broken down into separate parts, each pertaining to a specific thing in our application. So to get going, let's do this. Let's actually come to our lib folder. Let's create a new folder here and let's call it services. And within services, I am going to be creating a new file, and I'm going to call this auth_service.dart. So once this is done, what I'm going to be doing now is actually just creating a class within this, and this class is going to be called authService, like so, and then I'll open up the class definition. Within the class, all I'm going to be doing for now is basically creating the constructor for the class by doing authService, and then for now, let's just say that it's not going to get any parameters passed to it, and the body for the constructor will also be empty. Now that this is done, let's actually implement the login function between our authService class, and then we're going to be taking a look at how we can use it later on. So what I want to do is basically make this class reusable and composable. So what I want to do is basically create some kind of a universal login method that basically takes in an email and a password and then performs the login operation for us. So what I'm going to do is basically say that we're going to have a function which will return a future, and it's going to be a Boolean value that's going to be returned to us. It's going to be called login, and we're going to have two things that are going to be passed to us: a email in the type of string, and then a string password as well. And once we have the actual email and password passed to us, then we can use the actual Firebase Auth package to perform our login operation. I'm going to be opening up a try and catch block just to make sure that I catch any errors in the case that our actual authentication fails. And then within the try block, I am actually going to be writing our authentication code now. So what I want to do is basically first get access to our Firebase Auth package and specifically the instance on it for Firebase Auth, and then we can use that to actually log in our user. So to do that, what I will do is firstly, I will come to the top of my class, and here what I'm going to be doing is basically saying that we're going to have a final variable. It's going to be of type Firebase Auth. And then I'm going to say that's going to be underscore Firebase Auth like so. And then I'm going to be setting this equal to Firebase Auth, and then I am going to do dot instance like so. And then it's going to give me an error saying that Firebase Auth is not defined. So what I can do is actually just import the package in. So let me just quickly import the package. And there we have it. Now the error should be fixed. Once we have access to our Firebase Auth instance, what I can do is come back to my login function. And here I'm going to be doing Firebase Auth dot, and on this we have a function called sign in with, and then it's going to be email and password. And here we're just going to pass the email and password to this function. Once this is done, what I'm going to be doing is basically saving the result that we get from this function within a variable. So I'll do final credential equals to await Firebase Auth, and then sign in with password, email and password, and I'll mark this function as asynchronous. Once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is basically saying that if the credential dot user is not equal to null, then we basically can be sure that the login operation was successful, and what I can do is return true. Otherwise, what we'll do is that if we reach the very end of this function, then we'll return false, like so. And the final thing I want to do is basically save a reference on my auth service class, the actual user that's currently logged in. So to do that, what I'll do is create a property on the auth service class, which is going to be optional. It's going to be of type user. This class actually comes from Firebase Auth, and it's going to be optional, which means the user can be null. I'll say underscore user. And then within the actual login function, I'm going to basically within this if statement say that we'll set the user to be equal to credential.user like so, and do command save. And that's pretty much it. The last thing that I'm going to be doing is basically defining a getter function for our user. So to do that, I'll say that we'll have a getter function. It's going to return a user, which is going to be optional. It's going to be get user. And then within this, I'll just say that return underscore user like so, and do command save. So this way, now we'll be able to access our user from our auth service when we want to. So now that the login function has been defined, what we can do is actually come back to the Firebase side of things. So open up the Firebase project within your web browser of choice, and then we are basically going to come to the build section and click on authentication. Here, what we're going to be doing is basically saying that I want to get started with authentication. It's going to take some time to actually configure this, and then you're basically going to select the providers that you want to enable for authentication. What I want to do is basically only support email and password based authentication. So I'll click on email and password and then say enable and do save. Once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is coming to the users tab, and I'm going to be adding a new user here. So to add a new user for just testing purposes, let's just do Hussein at test.com. And then I am going to do password as test123 exclamation mark and add the user. Now that the user has been created, what we can do is actually come back to our application, and now we are actually ready to test the login logic. So now that we have created our authentication service, we need to make this available to the different parts of our code within our application. And the way we're going to be doing this is by using our get it package, which is a service locator package. So to do this, it's going to be fairly simple. The first thing that we have to do is that we need to register a new instance of this auth service class to get it. And then whenever we want to access our auth service, we can extract it from get it. So what we have to do now is come to our utils.dart file. And here what I'm going to be doing is creating a function, future void. I'm going to call it register services. Like so, it's going to take in no parameters, it's going to be async and open up its body. Then I'll get access to our get it package by doing final get it like so, and set it equal to get it dot instance. And for some reason, IntelliSense is not working. So what I will do now is actually just import the package in manually like so, and it should fix the error. And now that this is done, I'm going to do get it dot, and from here I'm going to do register, and I'm going to register a singleton instance of a class. And then within the actual parentheses, I need to pass in an instance of the class that I want to register. So in my case, it's going to be our authentication service. So I'll do authentication service like so. And that's pretty much it. And the last thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to also define the type of the actual service that I'm registering, or the singleton, I should say. So here I'm also going to add auth service and do command save. So now that this is done, we need to call this actual register service function within our actual code before we actually want to retrieve this service from getIt. So the best place that I found to put this code was within our main.dart file where we have our setup function. So once we've actually called setup, we are going to be setting up Firebase. So once we've set up Firebase, what I can do is actually call await, and here what we can do is say register services. And there we have it. That's pretty much all we had to do. So now what's basically going to happen is setup is going to be called. We'll wait for the widget Flutter bindings to be initialized, then we'll set up Firebase, and then we'll register our services, and then our authentication service is going to be registered within getIt as a singleton, and then we'll be able to reference this whenever we want to using getIt, and you'll see that later on. So now that this is done, let's actually run our application and make sure that everything's working as intended and nothing's broken, and then I will resume the video. So as you can see that the application is running as intended, so what we can do is move on to the next step now, and that is to actually come back to our login page and start implementing the login logic within our actual page. So to implement the login logic, what we have to do basically are three things. We first need to get some information from the user and validate it to make sure that they input some information with their email and password. Then we're going to be using the login function that we've defined on our Auth service to actually log in our user. And then after that, we're going to be using a service which we haven't defined yet, which is going to be our navigation service, which will then take us, if we've successfully authenticated, from the login page to our actual home page. And in the case that for some reason our actual login operation fails, then we're going to be using another service which we haven't defined yet, but it's going to show a pop-up message to the user letting them know that the operation was unsuccessful. So to get started, let's tackle the first thing first, which is to actually make sure that the user inputs something within the fields and that that information is valid. So to do that, what we'll do is firstly come back to our login_page.dart file, and we are going to come to the point where we have our actual form being created. So let me find the function for that. Here we go, login form. If you remember previously when we had created our login form, we had used a form widget, and within this we had placed our form fields. So now we're going to be using the power of this form widget to actually perform validation logic on these form fields, as well as save the values from these form fields when we want to. So let's do the logic for the validation first, and then we'll come to how we can extract information from the form fields as well, which the user has entered. To actually perform these operations, we'll have to define some kind of a key on our form. So I'll set the key property on our form to be something. And what is this going to be? Well, we'll come to the top of my class. And on the top of my login page state class, I'm basically going to say that I'm going to create a final variable. It's going to be of type global key. It's going to be form state, like so. And then it's going to be called login form key. And I'll set this equal to a new instance of global key, like so. And then I'll take this login form key. I'll come back to my login form and I'll set the key property to be our login form key. So now using this key that we've attached to our form, we'll be able to perform different operations on the actual form. So now what I'm going to be doing is basically coming to the point where we have our login button, and on our login button, we're basically going to be implementing some functionality for actually logging in our user. The first step within the actual login operation, once the user clicks on the login button, is to validate that the user inputs valid values within our actual fields. So to do that, what I'll be doing is using an if statement, and I'm going to say if the login form key dot current state, and then on that I'm going to call the validate function, and then I'm going to say that if this value is null, then it's going to default to false, and then I'll open up the body for this if block. So what's basically going to happen now is that when the user presses on this button, it's going to go to the login form key, which is attached to our form, and then it's going to call the validate function on it. And what validate is basically going to do is that it's going to go through the form's children and see all of the children, which are some type of a form field widget, and then call the validate function on them and make sure that for each of these children, the validate function passes before it actually returns true for the validation. But you are going to ask me a question now that, hey, we haven't implemented any kind of validation function on our form fields. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. So to implement the actual validation logic, what we are going to be doing is something similar to what we had been doing before, where we are going to come back to our custom form field, since that's the actual widget that we are using to show these form fields. And on this, what I'm going to be doing is basically defining a validator function. So our text form field, I'm going to define the validator function, and the validator function basically takes in a value and then expects us to either return nothing in the case that the validation is successful, or return some kind of a string in the case that the validation was unsuccessful. So that's how it determines whether the validation was successful or not. So how do we determine if the validation was successful or not? Well, what we're going to be doing is using the power of regular expressions to actually determine if the actual information that the user puts in within the fields conforms to what we expect the value to be. For your convenience, what I've done is left a link down in the description below to a place on my website where you can find some of the helper code that we're going to be using throughout this tutorial. I've also left a link to download the complete source code for this application that we're building, but this is going to be a paid resource, and I'd really appreciate if you can actually support me and actually download the complete source code. But in the case you're unable to do that, I've still left some helper code for you on this actual page that we're going to be using time and time again while we're building our application. So for now, what we're going to be doing is basically copying in all of the stuff that you see under const.dart here, and basically putting this within a const.dart file that we're going to be creating. And within this, I've actually placed all of the different regular expressions that you need for validating emails, password, as well as the name. So let's come to our actual Visual Studio Code instance. Let's go to our lib folder. Let's create a new file here, and I'm going to call this const.dart. Once this is done, I will actually copy the code that you see here for the const.dart file, come back and paste it in, and that's pretty much all we had to do, and command save. So now that this is done, you can actually minimize the Google Chrome window, and we are ready to perform the next step in the validation process. So to validate the values that are placed within our text form field, we are going to be doing the following operation. We'll check to see if the value is not equal to null. That's the first thing that we're going to be doing. And then what we'll do is that we are basically going to perform an operation on the regular expression to determine if the actual value that gets inputted within this form field conforms to the regular expression that we've defined. And as a quick crash course on what regular expressions are, I'm not going to go into too much detail as to what these are, but they allow us to pick up patterns within text, and we can use regular expressions to extract information from actual text using certain patterns and things like that. So here I've defined the regular expression for an email, and this basically makes sure that the email that the user puts in conforms to how an email should be. So like hussein@gmail.com or something like that. Similar for password, similar for name. But since regular expressions are a tad bit more of a complicated topic, I'm not going to be covering that within this video. But if you want a much more detailed tutorial on this, let me know. I'll try to create one for you. But let's come back to our custom form field, and now we have a problem at our head. Since we are using our custom form fields for getting the email and the password, and we're also going to be using this on our registration page, the logic for validation depends upon what type of information this field is going to be taking. So we can't hard code the logic here. So what I'm going to be doing is basically on my custom form field saying that we're going to pass in the regular expression to this actual widget, and that's the regular expression against which the value is going to be checked. So I'll say that there's going to be a property on the custom form field. It's going to be of type final regular expression. It's going to be called validation regular expression, like so. And then I'll say that when the custom form field gets initialized, it gets a name parameter passed to it called validation regular expression, like so. Then what I can do within my validator function is if the value is not equal to null and this validation regex that we get, we try to say that does it have a match with the value that the user has inputted. If that is the case, that pretty much means that the validation was successful, so I can return null. And if that is not the case, then what I'll do is basically say that we're going to return, and I am basically going to use the following string, which is enter a valid, and then I'm going to say whatever the hint text is. So enter a valid password or enter a valid email, whatever the hint text is, and do command save. So now that this is done, we can come back to our login page, come back to our custom form field, And now what I'm going to be doing is that on my custom form field, I'm going to define the validation regular expression. And for the first one, it's going to be email underscore validation regex, which comes from the constant dart file that we had defined. And for the password, it's going to be the password validation regex like so, and do command save. So now we're basically going to take these regular expressions, and dependent upon which type of custom form field that we are initializing, we're going to pass the corresponding regex to the actual custom form field. And then it's going to use that regular expression to determine if there is a match for the value that the user inputs within these fields. And if that is the case, that means that the validation was successful and we just return null, otherwise we return a string, which basically means that the validation was not successful. So that's pretty much all we had to do. And now you can see the power of using reusable components and creating all of these reusable bits of code within our application, since it's making it very easy for us to implement new functionality and also make our code less verbose. So now that this is done, let's actually test if the validation logic is working. So to do that, I believe everything is linked up. So if I click on the login button when the user hasn't inputted any values, you're going to see that the validation fails and we get these beautiful errors being displayed to us saying that we need to enter a valid password and enter a valid email. If I input some kind of a bogus value that doesn't conform to the schema of how an email should be, and I press login, the validation still fails. But as soon as I input a value that is similar to an email and press login, you can see that the validation now for the email passes, but for the password it doesn't. And then for the password, I can do test123 exclamation mark, login, and there you have it. Now the validations are passing, and what I can do is actually print woohoo here, just to show you that this actually works. And if I do command save, open up the terminal, and then actually go to our debug console, and if I press login, you're going to see woohoo being printed. So the last thing that I want to do is basically make sure that when the user inputs their password in the password field, that it doesn't show that as it's showing it right now on the screen and actually obscures it. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is coming back to my custom form field. I'm going to be defining a property on this, which is going to be final bool, and it's going to be called obscure text. Then what I'll do is that I'm going to say that this is going to be a named parameter, but it's not going to be required. It's just going to be optional. And by default, it's going to have a value of false. So by default, we're not going to be obscuring our text. Then I'll come to my text form field, and on my text form field, it's going to be a property called obscure text, which I'm going to set to obscure text. Then coming back to our login page, what I'll be doing is coming to the point where we have our custom form fields. And for my password one, I'm going to set the obscure text property to be true and do command save. And there you have it. Now you can see that the password is actually being hidden and that we are unable to see it. So that's great. Now our validation is actually working. So the next thing that we have to do is extract information from these fields and save them within some kind of variables. So how are we going to be doing that? Well, first let's do this. Let's go to the top of my login page state class. Let's create two variables here, which are going to be string optional, and they're going to store the email and the password, like so. Now that this is done, then what I'm going to do is come to the bottom where I have my actual login button. And here what I'm going to do is say that if the validation passes, then what we're going to be doing is calling a function on our login form key, and it's going to be underscore login form key dot current state, and then I'm going to do dot save like so and do command save. So now what's basically going to happen is that for the form on which this key is attached, it's going to go and call the save function on all of these form fields that we have. We don't currently have a save function on these form fields, so let's actually create that. So to do that, I'll come back to my custom form field, and I'm going to say that we are also going to be passing a function to this custom form field as a property. It's going to return nothing, so void. It's going to have the following signature, so it's going to be a function which is going to get a string optional attached to it, and it's going to be called onSaved, like so. And then I'm going to say that this is going to be a required property, so required this dot onSaved like so, and then do command save. Then what I'll do is that I'll come to my text form field, and I'm going to say that when onSaved is called, then we call our onSaved function. Then we can come back to our login page, come back to our login form field, and here I can define what happens when onSaved is called. So basically what I want to do is that when onSaved is called, I basically want to save the information of this actual form field within the actual variables that I've created. So to do that, if you remember, we are going to be creating a function, and this function is going to have a string optional pass to it. So we're going to call this value, and then within this I will do set state, and I'll set the email to the value that gets passed to us like so, and then I'll copy this whole block of code. I'll come back to my custom form field for my password, paste this in for onSaved, and this time I'm going to say that we're going to set the password to be the value and do command save. Now we can come to the bottom where I have my actual login button, and after we've saved our actual information from our form, then what I'm going to be doing is just basically printing it to the console. So to do that, I will do print, and then I'm going to say email, and then after that I'm also going to add another print statement, and I'm going to do password like so and do command save. So now with this done, let's actually open up our debug console and actually see if something gets printed to the console. So let's restart our application to make sure that the actual values are not there. We click on login, the validation doesn't work. As soon as I input valid values and the following password, and then I press login, you're going to see that within our debug console we can see Hussein at test.com and then test 1 2 3 exclamation mark. So everything is working as intended. So now we can remove these print statements and we can move on to the next step within our process, which is to actually log in our user. So to log in our user, now that we have our email and password extracted from form, we're going to be using the authentication service that we had created. So let's get access to that within this actual widget. So to do that, what we're going to be doing is coming to the very top, and firstly what I'll do is actually import the get it package like so. And once this is done, I will come back to my login page state, and here what I'm going to do is define a variable which is going to be final, type get it underscore get it, and set it to get it dot instance. And then what I'll do is that I'm going to say that I'm going to define a variable which is going to be elate. It's going to be of type auth service, and it's going to be called underscore auth service like so. And now that this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be defining the init state function on my login page state. And then after the superclass's init state function has been called, I will do auth service is equal to, and then we'll do get it dot get. And what do I want to get? Well, I want to get the auth service that I had registered in the previous step. So to do that, I will pass the type of the actual service that I want to get. So as you can see, it retrieves or creates an instance of a registered type. So what is the instance that I want to get? Well, I want to get the instance of auth service like so, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So now this variable is going to hold a reference to our auth service that we had registered in the previous steps within get it. So now I can come to the very bottom where I have my login button, and here we can actually use the authentication service to now perform the login operation. So to do that, I will create a variable which is going to be bool. It's going to store the result. It's going to be equal to await. So I'm going to mark this function as asynchronous. It's going to be auth service dot, and then we are going to be calling login like so and passing it the email and the password. And we can add exclamation mark here since we know that the email and the password are not going to be empty. And that's pretty much all we have to do. So now let's do this. If the result is true, so if result, that's what it basically means, we'll do something, else we'll also do something, and for now we'll leave these blocks as empty, and I will basically print the result here like so and do command save. So now that this is done, let's actually test this out. So to test it out, let's open up our debug console, and then let's see if we are actually able to see true being printed to the console. So let's do this. Let's actually change the email to be something that's not valid. So for example, tester.com. So this is a user that hasn't been registered in our application yet. And if I press login, you're going to see that we get a late initialization error. So this is not an error. We just got to make sure that we restart our application. So let's try it again. Hussein at tester.com. So remember, this email is of a user that isn't registered in our application yet. Login, and we're going to see that it says false. Now let's do the following where we do test.com. So this is a user that we had created. And if I do login, then you can see true. So there we have it. We're actually logging in our user correctly. Once the user has successfully authenticated themselves, the last step in the login process is going to take the user from the login page to our home page. So now let's take a look at how we are going to be doing that. To get started, the first thing that I'm going to be doing is basically creating a new navigation service within my project, and this is going to contain all of the code that relates to navigation, and then we're going to be using this service at various points throughout our application to implement navigation-based logic. So to get started, what I am going to be doing now is coming to my services folder, and under this I'm going to be creating a new file, and this time the file is going to be called navigation_service.dart. Once this is done, what I'm going to do is basically create this class like so, and then I am going to open it up. Within this class, what I'm going to be doing is basically creating a key, which is going to be laid. It's going to be a global key, and it's going to be called navigator state. And this is basically going to be a key that's going to hold the current state of our navigation stack. And then I'm going to call this _navigator key like so, and that's pretty much all we are going to be doing. Once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is basically creating all of the routes that are available to us within our application that the user can navigate to. For now, we just have one route, so let's create that, and then we can add later on more routes here. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll create a final variable. It's going to be a map of type string as keys, and then a widget that gets returned by a function, and this function takes in a build context. And then I will say that it's going to be _routes like so, and open it up and then create the map. For now, I'm just going to have one route, and it's going to be /login. So basically this route is going to take us to our login page, and for the function I'll say that we'll get a context passed to us, and then we'll return a instance of our login page like so. And then later on we'll add more routes here when we want to add more routes to our application. Now that this is done, I'm going to create the actual constructor for my navigation service, and within this constructor I'm going to set our navigator key equal to a new instance of our global key, and here the type for this is going to be navigator state. So let's do that. Once this is done, I'm also going to define a getter function so that we can actually access the navigator key on our navigation service. So to do that, I'll say that we are going to have a function which is going to return a global key navigator state, and it's going to be optional. I'm going to say it's going to be get navigator key, and then I'm going to say that it will return _navigator key like so, and do command save. Now that this is done, what I'm going to be doing is also creating another getter function that is going to allow us to get access to these routes that we've defined here. So for that, it's going to be pretty similar. I'll say that I have a getter function that's going to return the following map like so, and then it's going to be get, I'm going to call this routes like so, and then I'm going to open up the function definition and say that we are going to return _routes like so, and do command save. So now before we build our navigation service any further, what I'm going to do is basically register this. So to do that, I am going to go to my utils.dart file, and here I'm just basically going to do the same thing that I've done before where I was registering a singleton instance for my auth service. I'll copy and paste this code in, but this time instead of registering a singleton instance for our auth service, I am going to do that for our navigation service, and then that's pretty much all we are doing, and do command save. Now that this is done, let's give a quick restart to our application, make sure that nothing's broken, and then what we can do is go back to our actual navigation service file and see what other things we have to do here. So now what I'm going to be doing is basically implementing a method on our navigation service that is going to allow us to push something onto our navigation stack, as well as go back, as well as the ability to actually push an entirely new replacement to the current screen that we're seeing on a navigation stack. So these are going to be three different functions. Let's implement the push function first. So for that, I'll say I'll have a function that won't return anything. It's going to be called push named. It's going to take in a parameter which will be string, and this will be the actual name of the route we want to go to, so route name. And then I'll open up the function's body. Here we're going to access our navigator key, and then on the navigator key I'm going to access the current state, and then on the current state I'm going to call a function called push named. And then here we can pass in the route name like so, and do command save, and that's pretty much all we have to do. So as you can say, push name, you can see the definition says that it pushes a named route onto the navigator. Then I'm going to copy this function and I'm going to paste it again, but this time I'm going to say that instead of pushing a route, we are going to push the replacement named, and this way we're just going to completely replace the screen that's currently on the navigation stack with the new route that we give. So this time I'm going to do current state, but I'm going to do push replacement, and it's going to be named, and then we just pass it the root name. And finally, I want to also have the ability to go back. So for that, I am going to implement the go back function. So when we call go back, then we are going to go to the previous screen that we came from. It's not going to take any parameters passed to it. And we're going to do the same thing where we'll do navigator key dot current state. And then on top of that, I will do pop. And what pop is basically going to do is that it's going to take us to the previous screen that we came from. It's just going to, as the definition suggests, pop the topmost root of the navigation stack. So let's do command save, and that's pretty much all we had to do for our navigation service. So now we can actually use this and navigate to our home page. But we don't have a home page for now, so let's create that first. So I'm going to come to my pages. I'm going to create a new file here. I'm going to call this homepage.dart. Then I'm going to create a stateful widget here. I'm going to call it homepage, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. So for my home page, what I'm going to be doing now is basically just returning a scaffold. So what I'll do is that I'll say that instead of returning a placeholder for the build function for the homepage state, now we're returning a scaffold. And that's pretty much all we're going to be doing for now. And then what I'll do is that I am actually going to be coming back to my navigation service, and here we're going to be adding a new route now. So the route is going to be for our home page. So I'll say that I'll copy this, I'll paste this again as a new entry. This time the actual route is going to be /home, and this time the function is going to return a new instance of our home page, and do command save. So now that we've defined our navigation service, we've registered it, let's actually link this navigation service with our material app so that it uses it and we can also use it. So to do that, let's come back to our main.dart file, and we're just basically going to be implementing some functionality here so that we can link our material app with our navigation service. So firstly, we need access to our navigation service. So to do that, I'll come to my app class. I'll create a final variable here. It's going to be of type getIt. It's going to be underscore getIt, and it's going to be equal to getIt.instance. Once this is done, I'm going to say that I'm going to create a variable. It's going to be late. It's going to be type navigation service. And then what I'm going to do is call it underscore navigation service. Now that this is done, what I am going to be doing is basically within the constructor of this class, I'm going to remove the const keyword. And then I'll say that when the class gets constructed, we are going to basically set the navigation service equal to underscore getIt. And by now you should know it's going to be get. And here we're going to define the type, which is going to be navigation service, like so, and do command save. So now that this is done, we can take our navigation service and we can actually use that. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is on my material app, I'm basically going to be setting the navigator key, and I'm going to be setting that to the navigation services navigator key that we have available on it. Once this is done, I am actually going to take a look at what the error at the top is, and it's just saying that the my app class is not const anymore. So we can just remove the const keyword, and that should fix the error for us, and do command save. And now that this is done, I also need to give the material app all of the routes that are available within my application that the user can navigate to. So for that, what I'll do is that I'll remove the home property, and then I will set the routes property to be equal to the navigator service, and then the routes map that's available on it, and do command save. And finally, we also need to define what the initial route of our application is going to be. So when the actual app launches, what's the first page that we're going to go to? So for that, I'll do initial route, and then I'm going to put the name of the route here. So remember, this needs to map with the route names that you've defined within the routes map here. So it's, as you can see, /login. So I'm basically saying that the initial route is going to be /login. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now let's restart our application. And as you can see, nothing's broken and everything's working. So we can now go back to our login page and implement the functionality here so that when the login operation is successful, we navigate to our home page. So to do that, I'll come to the top of my underscore login page state. Here I'm going to create a new variable. It's going to hold a reference to our navigation service. I'm going to call this underscore navigation service. That within the init state function for this class, I'll do navigation service is equals to, and I'm going to do getIt.get. And then I am basically going to define the type of the service. So it's going to be navigation service, like so. And then after this, I can come down to where I have the actual button that's responsible for managing the logic for the actual login operation. And then I'm going to say that if the result is true, then what we're basically going to be doing is navigating our user to our actual homepage. So to do that, we have to access our navigation service. So let's do navigation service dot, and then I am going to do push replacement name. And the reason I'm using push replacement name is because I completely want to remove the login page and remove the ability of the user to go back to the login page once they've actually authenticated themselves. And then here the route name is going to be /home, like so, and then do command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now that this is done, let's actually just give a quick restart to our application, make sure that nothing's broken, and then let's put in a username and a password and see if it works. So for the email, let's do Hussein at, and then it's going to be test.com. And then for the password, I'm going to be doing test123 ! And then let's do login. And there you have it. We have successfully navigated, once the actual authentication process was successful, from our login page to our home page, and we do not have the ability to go back. So now that this is done, let's just quickly update the styling on our home page, and let's just quickly add some app bar here so we can actually see that we're on our home page. So to do that, I'll come to my home page, and on my home page, what I'm going to be doing is coming to my scaffold. And on my scaffold, I'm basically going to define my app bar like so, and I'm going to say that it's going to have a title which is going to say messages. And then that's pretty much all we're going to be doing for now. Now that this is done, the last thing that I want to do before we can call it an end or our login page is that if I restart my application, you can see that we do not automatically log in and we do not take the user to the home page. Even though I know that in the backend, the Firebase authentication package knows that the user had previously logged in and it persisted that state, and the user is currently available to us. So what we can do is that we can implement some kind of a logic. So when the application starts, we navigate our user from our login page to the home page if they've already authenticated themselves. So to do that, what I've done is that I've basically went to the main.dart file and I've accessed the authentication service here. So let's create a variable called auth service. It's going to be _auth service. Then what I'm going to do is when the class gets constructed, I'll set our authentication service to the following, which is _getIt.get, but this time we're going to get our authentication service. Do command save. Let's restart our application, make sure that nothing's broken. And then what I'm going to do is that for the initial route, what I'm going to be doing here is basically using a ternary operator. I'm going to do the following. I'll say if the auth service.user is not equal to null, then what we're going to be doing is that for the initial route, we'll go to /home. Otherwise, we'll go to /login and do command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do to implement automatically logging in the user once the application starts. So if I restart the application, you're going to see that we are automatically going to be taken to the home page if the user is not equal to null. But for now, it's not going to work. And there's a very crucial reason for that. And that's because if we go back to our authentication service, I can see that we only ever update the user when we call the login function for now. And we are not calling the login function anywhere when the application initially starts up, except for the fact when the user clicks login themselves. So wouldn't it be awesome if there was some kind of a listener function that we could listen to that could update us on the authentication state changes that happen within the Firebase Auth package? Well, lucky you asked, there's exactly something like that we can use, and I'm going to be using that to basically update the user every time some kind of a state change happens for the authenticated user. So to do this, what we're basically going to be doing is firstly implementing a function within our auth service class, and this function is not going to be returning everything, and it's basically going to be a function that's going to be listening to a stream. And I'm going to say that this function is going to be called auth state changes stream and then listener, like so. And now that this is done, I'm going to say that this is going to take a user optional that's going to be passed to us as a parameter, and then we can do whatever we want within this function. So what I'm going to do that if the user that gets passed to us is not equal to null, so if this is the case, then I'm going to set the user equal to user. Otherwise, what I'll do is that I'll set the user to null. And I just did this to make it more easy for you guys to understand what the code is, but a very short substitution to this could have been just set the user to user, like so, and that could have worked as well. but I just wanted to make the code more understandable to you guys, so I did it like this. So now that's pretty much all we had to do. So now what I want to do is basically get notified every time some kind of a state change happens on our Firebase Auth package. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing within the constructor of my auth service, I am basically going to be saying that I'm going to take the Firebase Auth dot auth state changes stream, and I'm going to attach a listener to it. And this listener is going to be this function that I've created. So I'll copy that, put this here, and that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. And this needs to be listened like so, and do command save. And there we have it. So now when the authentication service gets created, we're going to add a listener to the auth state changes stream. And every time the auth state changes, this function is going to be called, and we're going to update the user that it's available to us on our service. And then when we check for the user here, if the user is not null, then we'll navigate to our home page. So let's do command save. Let's restart our application. And this time, hopefully, fingers crossed, as you can see, when the application restarted, we were automatically taken from our login page to the actual home page. So now that this is done, the next thing that we can actually take a look at is how to implement a logout button on our actual home page so that the user can actually log out as well. Otherwise, we have no functionality available to actually log the user out. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll come back to my home page, and then I'll come to the section where we have our app bar being defined. And for the app bar, what I'm going to do is basically set the actions list. So on our app bar, we're going to have a property called actions, and it's going to be a list of widgets. And then here, what I'm going to be doing is basically adding an icon button. And then the on pressed callback for now is going to be empty. And then the icon here is just going to be icon, which is going to be a logout icon like so. And then I'm going to do command save. And as you can see, we can see that the actual logout icon is now appearing. I'm also going to update the color for this. So to do that, I'll just define the color property on the icon button, and now it's red. And now the last thing that I'm going to be doing is actually getting access to our authentication service and our navigation service, and then using them to log out the user. So to do that, it's going to be fairly simple. Let's first create a variable that's going to store a reference to our get it package. And let's quickly import it like so. Then once this is done, let's actually create two new variables which are going to store a reference to our authentication service, and a variable that's also going to store a reference to our navigation service. Now that this is done, let's quickly import these service files. And now that this is done, let's actually create the init state function. And then once the superclass's init state function has been called, then what I'm going to be doing is setting the auth service to the following, and then I'm going to set the navigation service to the following. So what we've doing before as well. Now let's restart our application, make sure that nothing's broken, and then we can come back to our build function to where we have our icon button within our actions list. Here within onPress, the first thing that I'm going to do is create a variable which will store a result, and this is going to be basically the output from the function on our auth service.logout. And as you can see, for now, we don't have this function. So let's go back and let's actually create a function on our authentication service that allows us to log out the user. So coming back to my auth service, what I'm going to be doing here is basically creating a function which is going to allow me to log the user out. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll create a function, and I'll say it'll return a future bool, and it's going to be called logout. And then I will open up the function's body, and I know that it's going to be an asynchronous function. Then I'm going to have a try catch block within this function, and I'm going to do the following within the catch block, which is to just print the error. And if we reach the end of this function, then I'll return false, meaning that for some reason the logout operation was not successful. Otherwise, I'll basically do await, and I will do Firebase Auth dot signout is, I believe, the correct function. Yep. And once this is done, we can do return true. So there we have it. We now have the logout function defined. So coming back to my home page, I'm now going to mark the onPressed function as asynchronous, and that's pretty much all we had to do. And once this is done, I will basically check the result. So if the result is true, then what we're going to be doing is basically doing the following navigation service. And then I am going to do the same thing that we have done before, where we are going to call the function push replacement named, and this time we are going to go to the login page. And the reason we're using push replacement named is because I want to completely remove the ability for the user to go back to the home page once they've logged out. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now that this is done, let's do command save. Let's restart our application, make sure that everything's working as intended. And if I press the logout button, you can see that the user was successfully logged out. And now this time, if I restart my application, you are going to see that the user is not being automatically re-logged in because the user during the last time they were running the application has actually logged themselves out. So with that, that's pretty much all we had to do when it comes to implementing login functionality within our application. And now we can actually take a look at how we can show some amazing toast messages to the user in the case that the login operation fails or that we log out. To create this functionality of showing toast to the users, or we can also say these alert messages, what I'm going to be doing is creating a service that is going to contain all of the code that's going to allow us to show alerts. So to get started, what I'm going to be doing is coming to my services folder, and here I'm going to be creating a new file, and I'm going to call this alert_service.dart. Once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is basically creating this class, so alert service, and then I'll open up the class definition. I'm going to create a variable within this class, which is going to hold a reference to our getIt package. So let's just quickly do that and do command save. And now that this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is basically creating the actual alert service constructor. And with this done, the only function that we're going to support on this class is going to be a function that's going to show a toast to the users. So to do that, I'll create a function that's going to return nothing. It's going to be called show toast, like so. It's going to take in two named arguments. The first is going to be a required argument. It's going to be string text. And the other one is going to be an optional argument, which is going to be the icon that is displayed on the toast. So it's going to be icon data, and it's going to be called icon. And by default, the icon that we are going to use is going to be icons.info. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And then I'll open up the function's body. Within the function's body, all I'm going to do is add a try catch block, like so. And within the catch block, I'm just going to print the error. And that's pretty much all we had to do. Within the try block, firstly, I'm going to be creating my toast and defining how it's going to look, and then I'm going to be calling a function on it that's going to show it to the user. So if you remember, when we were actually adding dependencies to our actual project, we had used a dependency that was delightful toast. So now's the time that we're going to be using that. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to construct a new delightful toast bar, and this class is going to come from the delightful toast package. And on this, I'm going to define some properties. Firstly, I'm going to set auto dismiss to true, which basically means that after some time, this actual toast is going to automatically dismiss. Then I'm going to define the position. So where is it going to be shown on the screen? For this, I'll do delightful toast bar position.top. Now that this is done, I'm going to define the builder function. So this builder function is basically going to define how this toast looks. We're going to get a context passed to us, and then this function needs to return how the actual toast looks. So we're going to return a toast card. And this is also a class that is available to us on Delightful Toast. For the title, what I'm going to do is basically say that the title is going to be a text widget, and it's going to be equal to the text that gets passed to us, like so, and do Alt-Shift-F command save. I'm going to add some of the trailing commas just to make the code formatting a bit better, and then I'm going to add some styling to the text, like so, and this is just changing the font weight and the font size. Then I'm going to the toast card, add a leading property, and this is going to be an icon, and the icon that we show is going to be the icon that gets passed. And then the size here for the icon is going to be 28, and that's what I concluded from my testing is a good size. And that's pretty much all we have to do. So the final thing we have to do once that we've constructed our delightful toast bar is to show it. So to show it, I'm going to call the show function on it. And the show function expects us to pass it a build context. So where do we get access to this build context from? Well, what we can do is that we can access our navigation services navigator key, and then we can access the context on that and then pass that here. So to do that, we need access to our navigation service. So how are we going to be doing that? Well, to do that, what I'll do is that within my alert service, I'm going to open up the constructor for it. And here, what I'm going to do is basically get access to our navigation service. But before we can do that, we need to create a variable that stores a reference to our navigation service. And let's import our navigation service as well. And then I'll do navigation service is equals to, and then underscore getIt.get. And we are going to add here the following, which is navigation service, like so, and do command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now I just need to remove the type definition from here, add it here, and do command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now I can take my navigation service, I'd come to the show method, and I can do navigation service dot, and then we can do current .navigator key .current context, and that's pretty much all we have to do. Add exclamation mark here as well, and command save. So now that this is done, before we can actually use our alert service, we have to register it. So I'm going to come back to my utils.dart file. I'm going to come to the point where we are registering our services. I'm going to copy the code. I'm going to paste it again, and this time we're going to register our alert service, and then I'm going to just copy and paste that here as well, do command save, and that's pretty much all we had to do. Let's restart our application, make sure that there are no errors, and then we can move on to actually using it. So the first place where I want to use my alert service is going to be the login page. So I'm going to come back to my login page. I'm going to come to the point where I define my login button function, then do the onPressed function. And here we're basically going to be displaying a toast in the case that the actual operation fails for logging the user in. So we need access to our toast service. So to do that, what I'll do is basically go to the top of my _login page state. Here I'm going to create a variable that's going to store a reference to our actual alert service. So let's do that. Then, as we had been doing before, we are going to, within the init state function, basically take the alert service and then set that equal to _getit.get. And I'm going to set that to alert service like so. Once this is done, I'll take my alert service and I'll come back to the very bottom where I have my actual login button. And here we're going to be using our alert service by doing alert service, and then we are going to do show toast. And that's pretty much all we have to do. And then the text here is going to be basically the following, which is failed to login, please try again. And then I'm also going to change the icon, and I'm going to say that the icon is going to be icons.error, and do command save. So now that this is done, let's restart our application, make sure that nothing's broken, and let's try to log in with a user that is not registered within our application. For example, Hussein at tester.com. We don't have a user like this. And if I do login, it's going to show me a toast, hopefully. And there you go. You can see that it's saying failed to login, please try again. And I can dismiss them, or they automatically dismiss after some time as well. So now what I want to do is also implement this functionality on the home page as well. So let's do test.com and log the user in first. And once the user is on the actual home page, when they click on the logout button, I want the same functionality happening. So let's come to our home page, and let's come to the home page state classes definition. And here what I'm going to be doing is creating a new variable which is going to store a reference to our actual alert service. So let's do late, and I'm going to say that this is going to be alert service, and it's going to be called _alert service. Then I'm going to come to the init state function. Here I'm going to do alert service is equals to _getit.get, and then I am going to do alert service like so, and do command save. Then we can take our alert service, we can come back to our build function, and then before we actually do navigation service that push replacement named, I'm basically going to do _alert service that show toast successfully logged out, and then icon, which is going to be icons.check. So now with this, let's restart our application. We are automatically logged in, and when we click on the logout button, you can see that it automatically shows me the toast saying successfully logged out, and now I've logged out as well. So that's pretty much all we have to do when it comes to implementing our alert service. And now we have a alert service that we can use within multiple different points of our application and show these beautiful alert messages. We can now move onwards to creating our register page and actually implementing all of the logic within our registration page so that we can also register a brand new user within our application. To get going with our registration page, what I'm going to be doing is dividing it up into two parts. First, we're going to be taking a look at implementing the complete UI for our register page, similar to what we did for our login page, and then we can move towards actually implementing the business logic for it. So to get started, the first thing that we're going to be doing is coming to our pages folder, and I'm going to close down all of the open files for now, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this our register_page.dart. Once this is done, I'm going to basically create a stateful widget, and this is going to be called register page like so, and do command save. Then what I'm going to be doing is for the actual build function for our register page state, instead of returning a placeholder, we'll be returning a scaffold, and do command save. Now that this is done, we can actually come to our navigation service, and here what we can do is actually add this to our route so that we can actually navigate to our register page. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is after my login route has been defined, I'm going to add / and I'm going to do register, and then it's going to be basically returning the register page like so. So now that this is done, let's do command save. That's pretty much all we had to do. So the next thing I want to do now is actually implement the gesture detector on our sign up text that we can see on our login page, so that when the user clicks on it, they are taken to the registration page. So to do that, we are going to be coming to our login page. And in my login page, I'm going to go and try to find the place where I have basically added the create an account link. And as you can see, here is the text that says sign up. So now what I'm going to be doing is basically wrapping this with a gesture detector. So to do that, I can do Control-Shift-R on Mac, like so, or you can just right click on the actual widget and do refactor. And then you can just say that you are going to be wrapping it with a widget. In this case, the widget is going to be a gesture detector. So let's do that. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And now what you're going to do is remove the constant keyword that's here, and then you can add a const keyword to the first text and const here as well, and do command save. Then on the gesture detector, I am going to add the onTap function callback, and for now we can set that to be an empty function. Within this function, we are basically going to be accessing our navigation service, which we already have access to on our login page. And then on that, I am basically going to call the push named function. And the reason I'm calling push named is because I want to basically push the registration page on top of the login page on our navigation stack. And this is going to allow the user the ability to go back to the login page in the case that they maybe just came to the sign up page on accident, or they want to go back. So then here the route now is going to be /, and if you remember, it's going to be register, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So now you can see the power of composing our application using various services and breaking our code down into various different widgets, that it's much easier to add additional functionality, even though at the start we had to add more boilerplate code. And it's much easier to maintain this as well. So now if I come back to my login page, I'm going to restart my application just to make sure that all of the changes do happen. And now if I click on the sign up link, you can see that it navigates me to the registration page. And if I swipe on the left hand side, I can go back as well, as you can see. So now we can actually begin building the UI for our register page. So on my register page, the UI is going to be pretty similar to what we had done before. Firstly, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set the resize to a white bottom instant property to be false. And then the body here is going to be a call to a function called build UI like so, which we have been doing before as well. Then I'll basically define the function by doing a function which is going to return a widget called build UI like so. And within this, I'm going to do the following. I'll say that I'll return a safe area, which is going to have some padding. And then the child of that padding is going to be a column like so. And now that this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing after this is basically defining the children on the column. So for now, this column is going to be empty. But now we're going to be adding the first child to it, and do command save and make sure that we get no errors. The first child that I'm going to be adding is just going to be the header text. So I'll copy and paste this code in. And the reason for that is because it's extremely similar to what we had done for our login page. So I'll come to my login page, and I am going to find where I have the function for my header text. So let me just copy that like so. And then I will come back and paste this in my registration page like so. And then I'm going to say that the first child in this column is going to be the header text like so, and do command save. And then all I have to do is just change the text. So now the first one is going to be let's get going instead of welcome back. And then the second one is going to be register an account using the form below like so, and do command save. Now that this is done, let's actually take a look at the remaining UI for our registration page. And as you can see, we're going to have the ability to actually add an image, and then 3 different form fields, plus a button for the register button, and then a link at the bottom which says already have an account so you can log in. So let's actually implement the ability to actually select an image, and then we can move on to the form fields. So to do this, what I'm going to be doing is firstly creating a function which returns a widget. It's going to be called login form like so, and open it up. Then what I'm going to do is basically return a container which is going to have a child, which is going to be a form like so. And then the child within this form is going to be a column widget. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And then for now, I'll set the children's list to be empty for our column. Then I can do command save and start adding the first child. So what I want to do is basically add the first child, which is going to be our picture selection field. So I am going to create a new function, which is going to return a widget. It's going to be PFP, which stands for profile picture selection field. And then what I'm going to do is open it up. Within this, I am going to basically say that I'm going to return, and for now, let's just do a circle avatar as the widget, like so. And then I can take this PFP selection field and add that as the first child within the column of our form for our login form. And I found out that I actually need to call this register form, so let's do that. And then I can take this register form and I can come to the top where I am adding my header text, and after that I'll add my register form. And there we have it. We can actually see the circular avatar. So now let's just change some styling attributes on it. So firstly, I'm going to change the radius on this. So I want the radius to be around 15% the width of the device. So the way I'm going to be doing this is by doing media query.offContext dot, and then from here we can do width dot size dot width. And then I can multiply this 0.15 and do command save. And there we have it. Now we've increased the size of the circular avatar. Once this is done, we basically need to define the background image. So what's the image that this avatar is going to display? So it basically depends on whether the user has selected an image or not. And then if they have, then we show that image. Otherwise, we show a placeholder. So how can we do that? Well, firstly, we need to create a variable that can store a reference to the selected picture of a user. So to do that, I'll come to the top of my class, and here I'm basically going to create a variable, which is going to be file optional, and it's going to be called selected image. And then this class can be imported from dart.io. And then we can come down and come back to our PFP selection field. Here, what I'm going to do is the following. I'll say that if the selected image is not equals to null, then we're going to be showing that image. Otherwise, what we're going to do is show our placeholder. So to show that image, what I'm going to be doing is the following. I'll do file and then selected image, like so. Otherwise, what I'm going to be doing is network image. And then we are basically going to be adding our placeholder image here. So this placeholder is going to come from the const.dart file. And remember that you can find this on my website where I have listed all of the resources, so you can get that from there. And I'm just basically going to be adding that here, like so, placeholder PFP. And then what I'm going to do is cast this as image provider. And that's pretty much all we have to do. And here it needs to be file image, I believe. It doesn't need to be a file. Like so, Alt-Shift-F, command save. And that's pretty much all we have to do. And now you can see that we are displaying a placeholder for now. And then we click on it, which we haven't implemented yet, and we select an image, then we'll show that image. To implement the ability for the user to actually select an image from their gallery that's on their device, we firstly need to create a service that's going to allow us to access this functionality of picking an image from the user's device. To implement the functionality of the user being able to click on this actual circular avatar and then select an image from their gallery, we're going to be using the image picker package, which we've added as a dependency to our pubspec.yaml file, as you can see here. So now what we're going to be doing is basically creating a service that's going to allow us to access this image picker's functionality and then pick an image from the device's gallery. So to get started, what I'm going to be doing is coming to my services, and here I am going to create a new file. This file is going to be called media_service.dart. And then what I'm going to be doing is basically the same thing that I've done before, where I'm going to create a class, call it media service, and then open it up. I am basically going to then define the constructor for this class, which is just going to be empty for now. And then what we can do is actually now implement the image picker functionality within this class. So we can call a function on this class and then pick an image from the device's gallery. To do this, I need access to my image picker. So I am going to create a variable. It's going to be of type image picker. This class is going to come from the image picker package. And then I'm going to call this _picked and set that equal to an instance of image picker, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. Once this is done, I am going to create a function which is going to basically handle all of the logic for accessing the device's gallery and then returning an image to us. So let's do that. This function is going to return a future file optional, which basically means that we might select a file, we might not. It's going to be called getImageFromGallery, like so. And then it's going to be async, and I'll open it up. And then again, this file class can be imported from dart.io. Here, what I'm going to be doing is creating a variable final. It's going to be of type X file. I'm going to call this underscore file and set that equal to await underscore picker dot, and then we are going to do pick image, and we're going to do the source to be image source like so, and then dot gallery. And that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. And then what I'm going to do is the following, which is if the underscore file is not equals to null, then we'll return a file, and it's going to be the following, which is file.path like so. And that's pretty much all we have to do. Otherwise, if we reach the end of this function, we'll return null and do command save. So there we have it. That's pretty much all we had to do for our media service. So now we got to register it and then use it within our register page. So to register it, what I'm going to be doing is coming to my utils.dart file, and within register services, I'm going to basically copy the code, paste it again, and this time I'm going to do that. We are going to do media service like so, and then the same here as well. And there we have it. Once this is done, I am going to restart my application just to make sure that nothing's broken, navigate back to our register page, and now we can actually use the media service. So to use the media service, pretty much going to be how we've been using any kind of service before, where we first gotta access get it. So to do that, I'll create a variable on register page state, and this is going to hold a reference to our get it instance. And after this is done, I am going to create a variable which is going to store a reference to our media service. So it's going to be the following late media service underscore media service like so. Once this is done, I'll define the init state function on this class. And after the superclass's init state function has been called, then all we'll do is set the underscore media service variable equal to underscore get media service like so. Once this is done, we can restart our application once more and come back to the sign up page and move on over to where we have our register form and then the PFP selection field. And now I'm going to basically wrap this with a widget, the circle avatar, and this is going to be a gesture detector. And then what I'm going to do is set the onTap property on this. And within the onTap function, I'm going to do the following. I'll say that we're going to have a variable file optional. It's going to be called file. It's going to be await. So we need to mark our function as async. And now that this is done, I'm going to do media service dot, and I can do get image from gallery like so. And then I'm going to do the following, where I'll do if file is not equals to null, then I'll do set state, and within set state, I'll select the selected image equal to the file that we had gotten and do command save. So now we're ready to test this functionality. So let's click on this regular avatar, and there we have it. Our gallery app really opens up and I can select an image. So let's do El Pacino. And there we have it, fantastic. You can see that the image updates and it shows us in the circular avatar the image that we had selected. So now we can move onwards to the next step, which is to actually implement all of the different form fields for getting the user's name, email, as well as password. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is basically coming back to my login form, or I should say register form. And here I'm going to be adding all of the different login form fields. So I'm going to use the same widget that I created before, which was our custom form field. So to do that, I'll come to my form, and after the PFP selection field, I'll add custom form field like so. And then I need to define the hint text, which for the first field is going to be name like so. Then I need to define the height on this. The height is going to be 10% of the height of the device. So we can do this. The validation regex is going to be the name validation regex. This is again available on our const.dart file. And then what happens when onSaved is called? Well, basically we're going to get a value passed to us. That's going to be the value within this field. And then we can basically do whatever we want between the onSaved function. So I'll come to the very top of my underscore register page state. And here I'm going to create 3 different variables, which are going to store our email, password, as well as name. So I'll do string email, password, and name. There we have it. Then I can come back to where I have my register form, come back to my custom form field, and now I'm going to do set state. And for this form field, when onSaved is called, then I want to do set state, and I want to basically set the name equal to the value that gets passed to us. And that's pretty much all we had to do. Now I'm going to add the trailing commas just to make sure the code formatting looks good. And there we have it. That's pretty much all we had to do. I can see that there are some styling issues, so I'm quickly going to fix them by fixing the alignment attributes on the column like so, and do command save. And the main axis alignment actually needs to be spaced evenly, I believe, and then the cross axis alignment is going to be center. And do Command save, and there we have it. Now these alignment issues have been resolved and all looks good. So now I can add the 2 remaining custom form fields. So after this, we're going to have a field to get email and a field to get our password. So for the email one, it's going to be email as the hint text. The validation regex is going to be email validation regex, and on saved is going to be the email being set to the value. And for the last one, it's going to be password, and it's going to be password validation regex. And within set state, I am going to do password is equals to the value and do Command save. And there we have it. Now we have name, email, and password. So the last thing we have to do is just basically add a button. So let's do that. So I'm going to create a function which returns a widget. It's going to be called register button, like so, and then I can open up the function's body. Within this, I am going to say that I'm going to return a sized box, which is going to have a child, which is going to be a material button, like so. Then for the actual material button, I'll do the onPress property to be an empty function for now, and later on we'll actually implement the logic for what happens when the user presses on the register button. And then I'm going to update the color to be the color scheme's primary color. And after that, I'm just going to add a child to this. And this child is basically going to be text which says register. Then I can take the register button and I can come back to my register form. And after the custom form fields, I can add my register button and do Command save. And there we have it. Now we can see our register button. So with this done, the final thing we have to do is add the links at the bottom of the screen so that we can navigate back to our login page. So to do that, it's going to be fairly simple. So what I'll do is firstly, I'll go back to my login page and I'll come to the very bottom. I will copy this function, which is create an account link, like so. And then I will come back to my register page. I'll paste this function here. I'll rename this function to login account link, like so. And then what I'm going to be doing is basically updating the text. So now it's going to say, do you already have an account? Like so. And if you do, then you can just log in instead of sign up. And then I'm going to take this login account link and I will go back to my actual build UI. And then within the column, I'm going to, after the register form, add this login account link and do Command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So the last thing that now I'm going to be doing is getting access to our actual navigation service so that we can use the push named argument. So to do that, I'll come to the top. I'll create a variable which will store a reference to our navigation service, underscore navigation service. Then here I'm going to do the same within the init state, which is get and then navigation service. And then after this, what I'm going to be doing is coming to the very bottom and making sure that instead of doing navigation service.push named, we just do go back. Because we came from our login page. When we go back, we'll go back to our login page. Now let's restart our application. Go to the sign up page. We can see the sign up page. Go back to the login page. We can see the login page. So there we have it. We've pretty much created the complete UI for our register page. And now what's left is to actually implement the business logic within this so that the user can actually register an account. To get going with implementing the business logic within our registration page so that the user can actually register a profile, we have to basically divide that up into 3 parts. Firstly, we're going to be taking the information from the user and then using this information to create or register an account for them within Firebase, within the Authentication tab. Once that is done, then we're going to be basically taking the profile picture that the user has selected and uploading that to Firebase Storage. And once that is done, then we're going to be taking some information about the user as well as their profile picture and saving that within our Firestore database so that we can have a list of all of the users that have registered within our application and that we can talk with. So basically, the registration process is going to be divided into these 3 steps. So we're going to be taking each thing one step at a time, and then by the end of this, we'll have a fully functioning registration flow. So first things first, what we have to do is basically implement the validation logic on our form to make sure that the user inputs information within the form before we begin the registration process. So to get going with that, what I'm going to be doing is coming to my actual register button. And within the register button, we are basically going to be doing the same logic that we had done before, which is to basically go to our onPressed and basically create a try catch block. And here I'm going to do print E. So within the catch block, we just print the error like so. Within the try block, the first thing we have to do is validate our form. So how are we going to be doing that? Well, firstly, I need to create a form key, attach it to my form, and then use that to perform validation. So let's go to our actual register form, and then let's add a key attribute to it. And now that we have to create a key, let's go to the top of our class and then create a key there. So let's come to the very top where we have our underscore register page state. And then here, what I'm going to be doing is basically creating a final global key, and I'm going to call this underscore register form key and set that to a new instance of global key. Then I can take this, come back to my form, set the register form key here, do command save, restart my application just to make sure that everything works, and then go back to the register page. Then we can come back to our register button, and within the try statement, I can do the following. I'll do if, and then I'm going to do register form key dot current state, and then I'm going to do dot validate. And otherwise, if this returns null, then we can just do false, and that's pretty much all we're going to be doing. And besides making sure that the form fields are validated, I also want to make sure that the user selects an image. So I'm going to use an and clause and say that the selected image is not equals to null. So if that is the case, that means that our registration form was correctly validated, and now we can save the information within it. So to do that, I will do register form key dot current state and then dot save and do command save, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So now when we click on register, you can see that the form validation logic is being rendered, and as soon as I put in some information, then the actual validation logic should pass for one of the fields, and this means that the actual validation logic is working as intended. So now before we can proceed any further, what we need to do is basically go back to our authentication service and implement some logic within it so that we can actually create a new user. So let's do that. So to do that, let's go back to our authentication service, and for now we have a login function, we have a logout function, so let's create a signup function. To create a signup function, I'm going to say that we'll have a future Boolean value that's going to be returned to us. This function will be called signup. It's going to take in a string email, and it's going to take in a string password. Then I'm going to mark this function as async and open up its body. Let's create a try catch block. Within the catch block, let's just print error, and then within try, we can actually implement the logic for registering a user. So I will do final credential is equals to, and I will do await underscore Firebase Auth dot, and then we are going to do create user with email and password and pass the email and password to this function. And that's pretty much it. That's all we had to do. Then I'll do the same that I've done before, which is to check if the credential.user is not equal to null. And if that is the case, that means that the registration process was successful. I can do user is equals to, and then I can do credential.user and return true. Otherwise, if we reach the end of this function, I will return false. That's pretty much all we had to do. So now I can come to my register page, and on my register page, what I am going to be basically doing now is using the auth service to call this function on it and register an account for our user. So how are we going to be doing that? Well, firstly, we need access to our auth service. So let's come to the top of our register page state, and let's basically create a variable which is going to keep a reference to our auth service like so. Then within the init state, I can do auth service like so is equals to underscore get it dot get, and then here it's going to be auth service, and do command save, and let's restart our application, make sure that nothing's broken. Then I can come back to my register button, and after we save our register form key, so the state on our register form, then we can actually call this function to sign up our user. So to do this, what I want to do is basically call this function and also store its result. So let's do a variable bool result is equals to await, and since we're using await, we need to mark this function as async, and then we're going to do auth service dot, and then we're going to use sign up, and then we can pass the email and the password, and we can add exclamation mark here since we know that email and password are now going to be empty. And then once this is done, I am going to do if result and then open up the if clause, And besides this, I'm also going to print the result to the console for now so that we can see whether creating a user was successful or not. And one last thing I want to do is when the actual registration process starts, I want to show a loading indicator instead of this form. So to do this, what I'm going to be doing is coming to the top of my class. And here I'm going to be creating a Boolean variable, and I'm going to call this is loading, like so. And by default, I'll set this to false. So by default is loading is going to be equal to false. Then what I'll do is I'll come to my build UI function and I'm going to do the following. I'll say that if, and then here I'm going to do if not is loading, then I'm going to show our register form like so. And I'm going to do the same for the login account link as well. So if it's not loading, so if loading is false, then we show our register form and our login account link. Otherwise, if is loading is true, then we basically return or show an expanded widget, and the expanded widget has a child, which is a center widget, which has a child, which is a circular progress indicator. And that's pretty much it. That's all we had to do. I'm just going to add the remaining trailing commas, and that's it. Now, if I go to the top and I set is loading to true, you can see that now we're going to, as soon as I restart the application, actually see a loading indicator appearing on our registration page. And if I set is loading to false and then restart my application, you are going to see that now if I come to the register page, then we're seeing our form. So now we can basically come to our registration logic, which is in our register button. So let me come down. Yeah, there we go. And then when we actually start the registration process, what I'm going to be doing is the following. I will do set state, and then I'll set is loading to true, like so. And then at the very end of this function, I'm going to do set is loading to false, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now what's basically going to happen is that we are basically going to try to input some information here and try to see if we're able to register a user. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll basically come back to the Firebase console on Google Chrome, come to the authentication bag, and show you that for now we just have one user created. So let's delete this user and try to create them again. So let's delete. Now we don't have any users. Minimize the screen, come here, and now let's input some information and make sure that the registration logic works as intended. So sign up, and we don't need to select an image for now, or we need to, but it's not going to do anything. But let's do Denzel Washington. Then the name is going to be Denzel Washington, like so. Email would be denzel@test.com. And then once this is done, let's do test123 ! As the password. I can see that there's a small issue here. We need to obscure the password. So let's just quickly fix that by coming to our custom form field for our password and setting the obscure text property to be true. There we have it. And that's just the registration logic. So when I click on register, the loading form shows, and then we are back now. And if you come to Firebase, go to the users tab, there we go. Denzel was successfully registered. So one part of the equation is done. We have the remaining two parts, which is to upload the user's image now. And then we also need to figure out how we can save this user's information within Firestore database. So let's do the first thing first, which is to actually store their image. So to store their image, we're basically going to be storing that within Firebase Storage. So let's come to the storage, and this is found under build storage, and then click on get started. You can start in test mode and then click next and do whatever location you want, and then do done. And this is going to create a bucket for you within which you can store these media objects. And then this is going to create a bucket for you within which you can store your files. Welcome back, everybody. So now you can see that the storage bucket has been initialized properly, and then we can see our bucket. So we can minimize this, and we can come back to coding logic within our application so that we can upload files. I'm going to be doing something similar to before, where now we're going to be again creating a service. This service is going to be responsible for allowing us the ability to interact with Firebase Storage. So to get going, I am going to come to my services folder, and here I am going to create a new file. This file is going to be called storage_service.dart. Once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing within storage_service.dart is create a class called storage service. And then I'm going to create the constructor for this class, which is going to be empty. Once this is done, I'm basically going to create a function which will allow us to upload a user's profile picture, and it's going to return to us the download link for the actual profile picture that we can use to then display that profile picture at different places using a URL. So it's basically going to return a URL to us. So the function is going to return a future string, optional, because the file upload might fail. Then I'm going to say that this is going to be called upload user PFP. And then we're basically going to be taking in two arguments. The first is going to be a named argument, and it's going to be required. It's going to be the file that needs to be uploaded. It's going to be called a file. And then we can import this class from .io. So let's do that. The next is going to be the UID of the user. So I'll do required string UID. So this is the user's unique ID. And that's pretty much all we had to do. Then I will mark this function as async and open up the function's body. Within here, the first thing that we need to do is get a reference to the place where within Firebase Storage we need to store our file. So to do that, firstly, I need access to Firebase Storage. So I will create a variable, and that's going to be of type Firebase Storage underscore Firebase Storage and set it to Firebase Storage.instance. And this class is going to come to us from the Firebase Storage package. Then within the upload user PFP function, I need to create the reference. So I'm going to do reference, and then I'm going to set that equal to file ref as the name, and this is going to be equal to our Firebase Storage. And then I'm going to do the following thing. I basically want a folder at the very root level of my bucket, which is going to be called users. And then within that folder, I want to create another folder, which is going to be called PFPs, within which I want to basically save these users' images. So that's what we're going to be doing. So to create this reference, I'm going to do Firebase Storage, and then we are basically going to do .ref. And then the ref is basically going to be users. So this is the users folder slash, and then the PFPs folder. And then after this, I'm going to have a child within this. And this child is basically going to be the name of the file. So the name of the file is going to be the following. What I want to do is make sure that all of the file names are unique. So I'm going to do the following. I'll take the user's unique ID and use that as the name of the file plus whatever the extension of the file is that the user selects. So let's first interpolate the user's UID within the string, and then we need the extension as well. So how do we get the file's extension? Well, we're going to use the path package that we have added to our pubspec.yaml file, and it's going to give us the ability to actually extract the extension from the file that gets passed to us. So let's import the path package. So to do that, I'm going to do import package path/path.dart as p, and then here within the string, I'm basically going to interpolate the following value, which is going to be $, and then 2 curly brackets, and within that I am going to do p dot, and it's going to be extension, and here what I'm going to do is basically pass in the file.path. So it's automatically going to determine the extension from the file's path, and that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. So once we have the file's reference, then what we can do is create an upload task. So to create an upload task, it's going to be upload task. I'm going to call this task, and this is going to be equal to the file ref that we have, and then I'm going to do .put file, as you can see, and pass the file here. And now it's going to take this file reference and it's going to upload our file to this file reference. Moving forwards, the last thing that I will do is that I will return my task like so, and there we have it. But right now it's going to give us an error, and the error is going to be the following, which is that we can't return an upload task for future string question mark. So how do we fix that? Well, what I'll basically do is that I will say when the task is complete to task.den, then I'll basically get a property passed to me, and I will basically do the following. I will check if the p.status is equal to task state dot complete, task state dot success, and if it is success, then I will return the following, which is going to be file ref dot, and then it's going to be get download URL, and that's pretty much going to fix the issue for us. And now once the upload task completes, we'll return the downloaded URL, and then this function is going to return that to us, which then we can use later on. So now that this is done, we can use the storage service to now upload the user's profile picture as well. But before we can do that, we got to register the service. So let's come to our utils and let's copy the getIt.register singleton function, paste it again within register services, and this time we are going to be registering our storage service, like so. And then I'm going to add this here as well and do command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now let's restart our application, make sure that nothing's broken. And we can log out because we are automatically logged in because we had created a user in the previous step. Come back to sign up. And then here what I'm going to be doing is coming back to our register button function. But before we can do anything on the register button function, we need access to our actual storage service. So let's do that. So let's come to the top of our actual class. And then here I'm going to create a variable which will store a reference to our storage service, like so. And then I'm going to import this class. And within the init state function, I am going to do the same thing that we've been doing before, where I'm going to do underscore storage service is equals to underscore getIt.get storage service. Then we can come to the very bottom and then where we have our registration logic going on. And now what we're basically going to doing is if the result of the actual sign up call is true, then we can actually take a look at uploading the file. So to upload the file, it's basically going to be the same process. First, I'm going to create a variable, which is going to store a reference to the uploaded URL for the actual profile picture. And I'm going to set this equal to await underscore storage service dot, and then I am going to do upload user PFP. And then here we're basically going to require two things. We need the file that needs to be uploaded as well as the user's UID. The file is going to be the selected image, and we can add an exclamation mark here because we know that this image is not going to be null. And then we can access the UID from our auth service. So I can do underscore auth service dot user and then dot UID like so, and do command save. And now that this is done, we can restart our application. We can also come back to Firebase console. I can go to the authentication tab. I can delete the user that we had created previously, come to storage, show you that right now within storage there is nothing, and now we can test this logic. So to test it, let's come to our register page. Let's select an image. This time we can do George Clooney. The name is going to be George Clooney, like so. Email could be george@test.com. And then I'm going to do the password. And that's pretty much it. Let's do register. And in some time it should work. And we're seeing the form again. But now if I go back to storage, let's come back to authentication. First, I can see that the user was created successfully. And within storage, I can see that the users folder was created, underneath of which I have a PFPs folder, underneath of which I have used the user's UID plus the extension of the file to save their actual file. And this is the actual download URL. So if I click on the name, it opens up the actual image and I actually download it. But if I do copy link address and show you here, this is what the download URL looks like. So that's pretty much what gets returned to us, as you can see. So with this, we can conclude that not only are we registering our user properly, but we're also uploading the image properly as well. So the last thing is to take this information and save this within our database so that we have a list of users that are registered within our application. So to do that, we need to enable our Firestore database. So I'll come to Firestore database, and then I'm going to click on Get Started or Create Database. And here the location is going to be whatever your preference is. So I'll just let this load, and then the location could be whatever your preference is. And then I'm going to click on Next. You can start in test mode and click on Create, and then it's going to provision Cloud Firestore for you. So now that the database has been created, as you can see within Cloud Firestore, I can see that the database is now empty. We can come back to our application and see the next steps that we have to take. So now what I want to do is basically take the information from the actual user, that's their name, email, and password, as well as the information about the download URL for their profile picture, and then save this information within Cloud Firestore. So how are we going to be doing that? Well, firstly, we need to have some kind of a service that's going to enable us to interact with Cloud Firestore. So let's create that. To do that, I'll come to my services folder, and I'm going to create a new service here. I'm going to call this database underscore service .dart. Then here what I'm going to be doing is basically creating a class, and I'm going to call this database service and open up it. Here I'm also going to create a constructor that for now is going to be empty. Then after this, I'm basically going to create a variable that's going to store a reference to our Firebase Firestore, and this is going to come from the actual Firebase Firestore package. So let me just copy this and paste it in. This package, for some reason, IntelliSense isn't working. And now the error should be fixed. So now we have access to our Firebase Firestore instance. Once I have this done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is basically creating a variable that is going to store a reference to our users collection, which is going to be within Cloud Firestore. For now, we don't have it, but what I'm basically referring to is starting a new collection, and I'm going to give the name to this collection of users. And underneath, I'm going to have documents, which are going to be the profile of all of the different users. So let's do cancel here and let's programmatically create it. So firstly, what we need to do is create a collection reference, and then using that collection reference, we can store documents within it. To create the collection reference, what I will do is basically create a variable, and it's going to store a collection reference. It's going to be optional, and it's going to be underscore users collection, like so. Now that this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is basically creating a function, and I am going to call this underscore setup collection references, like so. Then when the actual database service gets constructed, I will call setup collection references and do command save. The next thing that I'm going to do is the following, which is to do underscore users collection is equal to, and then we will basically access our Firebase Firestore instance. And on that, I'm going to access a collection, and the collection is going to be users. And that's pretty much all we're going to be doing for now. The next thing that I want to do is to make sure that whenever we put data into this collection and we get data out of this collection, that it corresponds to a schema of a specific Dart class that I've defined. This is not necessary, but what I want to do is ensure type safety within my project and make sure that the information that I put within the database and get from the database conforms to a specific structure. Now I'm going to be doing is basically creating a model file, and this model file is going to store a representation of how a user profile is going to look, and then we'll use that to actually tell Firebase Firestore that, hey, whenever you save information to the database, you need to save it in a certain manner, and whenever you retrieve it, you need to retrieve it in a certain manner. So it might sound confusing, but I'll just become clear in just a bit. So the first thing that you'll have to do is that you'll have to come back to my resources that I have left on my website, and a link to this will be down in the description below. And you'll basically create a user underscore profile.dart file, and you're going to put the following code within it. So let's copy it, let's come back, let's come to our lib folder, let's create a new folder here, let's call it models, open it up, say new file, and this is going to be user underscore profile.dart. And then I'll paste the following code in. So this basically defines a class which is user profile, which has 3 properties on it: the user's UID, name, and PFP URL. And then we have some helper functions defined on it, which allows to take in some JSON and then return a representation of the user profile, as well as turn the user profile into JSON. And that's pretty much all this class does. So now I'm going to close down this class, come back to my database service, and I'm going to do the following. So when I set up my collection reference, I'm going to use the .with converter function. And what I'm basically going to do here is define what happens when we add information to this collection. When we add information to this collection, the toFirestore function is going to be called, and we're going to perform some data manipulation here, and then whatever thing we return is the stuff that's going to be saved to the database. And from Firestore is going to be called every time we retrieve a document from this collection. It's going to perform some data manipulation, and then it's going to give that to us. So let's do the from Firestore first, and then we'll go to toFirestore. Or let's do toFirestore first, because that way it'll make sense, and then we'll come to from Firestore. So when we are saving information to Firestore, we're basically going to get the user profile and another parameter that I do not want to use, so I'm just going to set that to underscore. And what I'll do is I'll take this user profile, which is going to be an object, and then I will call the toJSON function on it, like so. But for now, we are going to get an error, so don't worry, we'll fix this error in just a bit. So what's basically going to happen is that we're going to get an instance of a user profile passed to us, which is this class that we've created. And then we'll call the toJSON function on it, which will take this class and give us a JSON representation of it. And that is what we're going to be saving within Cloud Firestore. When we get information from Cloud Firestore, then I want to do the opposite. I want to take the JSON and I want to convert that to an instance of our user profile class. So to do that, it'll be the same. We're going to get snapshots and then a second parameter that I want to ignore. So I'll use it underscore, and then I'll do the following. I'll do user profile. And then instead of using the default constructor, I'm going to do dot from JSON. And here I'm going to basically pass it the snapshots.data, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. And the last thing that I'm going to be doing is that on the with converter, I'm going to define the type of the actual class. So it's going to be user profile, and there we have it. That's pretty much it. That fixes all of the issues. And now we've defined a reference to our user collection with some strong type safety built in it, so that we are able to send information to Cloud Firestore that conforms to a certain schema. And when we get information from it, it also conforms to a certain schema. So there we have it. Now we have our users collection created, so we can use this to add documents to it. So how can we now create a document? Well, for that, what I'll do is that I will create a function, and I'm going to say this will be a function that will be future void, and it's going to be called create user profile, like so. And it's going to take in a user profile object. So I'll do required user profile, and then I am going to call this user profile, like so. And then I'll open up the function definition, and I'll mark it as async. I can also close down the debug console. And here what I'm going to be doing is the following. I'll do await underscore users collection, and then I'm going to do dot, and we are going to do document. And what's the ID for the document going to be? Well, if I don't input anything here, then it's going to be automatically generated, but I want the document ID here to correspond to the user's unique ID. So for that, what I can do is the following, which is to do user profile dot UID. And once this is done, then I'll do dot set, and set is going to expect us to pass it a instance of our user profile. So I'll just send that here, and it's automatically going to understand using the with converter that when we save information to Firestore, that it needs to convert this user profile to JSON. So this is the power of using the with converter function. So now that this is done, that's pretty much all we had to do for our database service. So I can come back to my utils.dart file. I can register my database service like so, and do command save. Then I can restart my application, and while that happens, I can come back to the Firebase console. Within storage, what I'm going to be doing is basically deleting the folder, just to show you guys that we've removed everything from here. And we're going to rerun all of the logic for registering a user. And then I'm going to come to Authentication tab, and I'll delete the user that we had created as well. And then within Firestore database, you can see that for now, we have nothing within it. So now let's test if the actual registration logic works as intended. So to do that, what I am going to do now is come back to my register page, come to my register button, and here we're going to do the following. Once we've uploaded the actual profile picture and gotten the profile picture URL, and it's not equal to null, then we can move on to the next step, where we're basically going to do the following. We're firstly going to access our database service. So for that, let's go to the top of our class and create a variable which is going to store a reference to our database service. Let's import our database service, and let's take our database service and set that equal to underscore get database service, like so. Then I'm going to come to the very bottom, and here I'm going to do the following. We'll firstly access our underscore database service. So let's do underscore database service. And then on that, I'm going to call the create user profile function. And now I need to pass it the user profile. So the user profile, I'm going to create a new instance of our user profile, and it expects me to pass it three things. It needs to be the user's name, the user's PFP URL, as well as the UID. So the name and the PFP URL we already have. So where do I get the UID from? Well, I can do auth service.user.uid, and there we have it. That's pretty much all we had to do. Alt Shift F, command save, and that's pretty much all we had to do. The last thing that I'm going to be doing is actually using my alert service that we have created previously to show a toast to the user saying the user registered successfully. So to do that, it's going to be the same logic as well. Firstly, I gotta create a variable that stores a reference to our alert service. So I'll come to the top of my register page state, and here I'll create a variable which is going to store a reference to our alert service. Then what I'll do is that within the init state function, I will do alert service is equals to underscore get it alert service. then I can come to the very bottom, and once we've created the user profile within our Firestore database, then what I can do is basically use our alert service and show an alert to the user, letting them know that the operation was successful. So I'll just copy and paste that code in because it's very similar to what we had done before. So alert service that show toast user registered successfully and an icons.check. So now let's log out. Let's restart our application, make sure that nothing's broken. Let's come to the sign up button. Let's actually select an image. So this time we can do, for example, Leonardo DiCaprio. So Leonardo DiCaprio. Let's do email as leo@test.com. And then the password is going to be test123 exclamation mark. Let's click register. And fingers crossed, hopefully everything should work as intended. And there you go, everything works as intended, and we see the alert saying that the user registered successfully. So now we can come back to Cloud Firestore. Let's go back to Firestore database, and let's see, we have a users collection. We have a document within the users collection, and that document stores information regarding the user's name, PFP URL, and UID. So there we have it. The whole registration process is now working as intended. And the last thing to do is to just take the user from our registration page to the home page. So let's quickly implement that. So to navigate the user from our registration page to the home page, once we've shown the alert, it's going to be fairly simple. All I'm going to do is the following. I'll do navigation service dot, and I'm going to do push replacement named. And then here I'm going to say the following, which is that we are going to go to /home like so and do command save, and that's pretty much all we had to do. But before I do that, the first thing that I'd like to do is to go back to our login page, and then from our login page go to the home page. So I'm going to do another call, which is going to be navigation service dot go back, and then once we go back, after that I want to push a replacement named /home. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And the last thing besides this that I want to do is that in the case that any kind of an error happens, then I just want to basically show an alert to the user, letting them know that the operation was unsuccessful. So for that, within the catch block, after I print the error, I'm going to do alert service.showToast, failed to register, please try again. And that's pretty much all we are going to be doing. And besides this, one more thing that I'm going to be doing is the following, and that is if the result that we get is not equals to true, so I'll do else, then we'll basically just throw an exception saying unable to register the user. And one more thing that I'm going to do is that if the profile picture URL is null, so else here, then I'm going to throw an exception as well, but this time I'm going to say unable to upload user profile picture and do command save. And you're going to see how this works later on in just a bit. But now all of the logic has been implemented, so what I can do is basically test the complete registration flow. So to do that, I'll restart my application as if a new user would come in, and let's log out because previously we had logged in by actually creating a user. Let's do sign up, and let's create a new user. Let's do El Pacino, so El Pacino. Then it's going to be l@test.com, and then I am going to give it a password and do register, and it's going to go through the whole process, hopefully show us an alert in some time, and it's going to take us to the actual home page with the user being registered successfully. And now if I restart my application, we're automatically going to be taken to our home page because the user had already registered and logged in the previous step. And now we can log out, and there we have it. We've successfully logged out as well. So now the whole authentication flow is working. We can log in users and we can register new users. So let's test one more thing, and that is, does the actual registration process fail if the user exists? So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll select George Clooney again. Let's just say that we create George Clooney once more. And I'll say george@test.com. So I believe that this is a user that we've already created. And if we haven't, we can just create an account and we can test again. But I believe that this user was created by us. Click register. Let's see if we have created this user. I don't think so because we have only El Pacino and Leonardo DiCaprio. And now we have a new user that was created, which is George Clooney. So now we can test the actual failing logic. Let's go to sign up here, George Clooney, and then let's do GEORGE George Clooney. And then the email could be george@test.com. And then the password can be test123 ! Register. And as you can see, it says failed to register, please try again. So there we have it. The registration logic is working completely. Now we're able to register users as well and handle errors perfectly fine. With the login and registration flow now completely working within our application, we can move to our home page and actually implement the logic for showing a list of users to the user with whom they can have a chat. So before we can actually take a look at what we have to do on the Flutter side of things, let's actually go back to our database, and I just quickly want to show you something. If you come back to the Firebase console, come to Firestore database and take a look at our users collection, you can see that we have for each of a user a document created under our collection, under which the document's ID is the user's unique ID, and then each document contains the user's name, profile URL, as well as what the UID of that user is. So our logic for actually showing the list of users is going to be the following. We'll come to our users collection and then we'll basically query all of the documents except for one, and the one that we're going to skip is going to be the one whose UID, that's here, is going to match with the currently logged in user's UID. So this way we'll only show a list of users to the currently logged in user that are not him and that he can actually have a conversation with. So hopefully that makes sense. So with this then, now we can go to the Flutter side of things and let's see what we have to do. So I'll close down our registration page and database service page, and then we can just open up our home_page.dart file. And within home_page.dart is where we're basically going to be implementing all of our logic. Within my home page, the first thing that I'm going to do is come to my scaffold. And then within my scaffold, after I've defined my app bar, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is basically setting the body property. And I'm going to set that to a call to a function called build UI. Then underneath of this, I'll create a function that returns a widget. It's going to be called build UI like so, and then I'll open up the function's definition. Within this, all I'm going to do is basically return a safe area with some padding child to it. And then we're basically going to add some padding here. So the padding is going to be the following. I'm going to do padding of 15 pixels on the horizontal and 20 on the vertical axis, and do command save. Once I've defined the padding, then what I'm going to do is basically add a child here, and the child for this padding widget is going to be another call to a function that's going to be our chats list like so, and that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. Then I will create another function which returns a widget. It's going to be called our chats list like so, and for now we can just say that it returns a container just so that we can test our code, and do command save. With this done, I'll log into my application as the users that's currently registered. So at this point we have 4 different users within our application, as you can see. So I'm going to log in as one of them. Let's do Keanu. So for that, I'll come to the email and I'll do keanu@test.com, and then the password is going to be test123 ! And let's log in. And now that we've logged in, we can see our home page. So now we can actually implement how to show the actual list of users here. But before we can actually start creating the UI, we should actually take a look at how we can query this information from the database. And then once that part is complete, then we can actually take a look at displaying the data. So if you remember, we are going to be basically adding this functionality between our database_service.dart file, because this is the class which is basically responsible for adding data to our database and getting data from our database. So here we're going to be basically creating a function that allows to query the specific information that we need from the users collection. So to do that, what I'll basically do is that I'll say that we are going to have a function that will return a stream, and it's going to be called get user profiles like so. And then I'm going to open up the function's body. Within this, I'm going to do the following. I'll say that we are basically going to access the users collection, which we've already defined. And on this users collection, I'm going to get all of the documents besides the one that has the UID, which corresponds to the currently logged in user's UID. So how can I do that? Well, for that, I need to apply some kind of a filter. So what I'm going to do is the following. I'll say users collection dot where, and then here I'm going to basically define the criteria for how we're going to get the documents or locate the documents that we want to get. So what I basically want to do is query over the UID field, And what I want to do is make sure that it's not equal to, and then we need to get the currently logged in user's UID. So how do we get that? Well, we need to get access to our auth service. So let's quickly do that. To do that, I'll come to the top of my database service, and here I'm going to create a reference to a variable, which is going to store a reference to our auth service. Then I'll import our auth service, and then what I'm going to be doing is basically within the constructor, I'm going to do underscore auth service is equals to underscore get and then auth service. And then I also need to get the reference to our get instance, so let's do that. And that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. So now that we have access to our auth service, I can come back, and here I can do auth service dot user and then dot UID, and that's pretty much all we have to do. And then I'll access the snapshots on this, and that's pretty much all we have to do. The reason we're using snapshots is because, as you can see, it returns us a stream of query snapshots. And the benefit of this is that we'll be able to update our UI as data within the actual database changes, and we'll automatically get these changes shown across our UI. So that's why we're using a stream here. So now that this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is just fixing it up a bit. As you can see, it tells me that we are not returning anything from the body, so it might complete abnormally. So I'll do return the user's collection snapshot like so, and it's also going to give me another error saying that a value of stream query snapshot object can't be returned for the method get user profiles because it has stream dynamic. So how do I fix it? Well, to fix it, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to define the type of the stream, and it's going to be of type query snapshot, and then the type of the query snapshot, if you remember, is going to be user profile. And then once I've done this, I'll also cast the snapshot as a stream, and then I'm going to do query snapshot like so, and then here I'm going to do user profile. And there we have it. That should pretty much fix the issue for us. So now that we have our function defined that is going to help us get the information from our database, the next thing that we can do is come back to our home page and start implementing this function. So on my home page, basically what I'm going to be doing is removing this container. Instead of this, I'm going to be using a stream builder widget. And as the name suggests, the stream builder widget basically allows us to ingest stream, and then using the stream's data, we can build the actual widget. So here, what is going to be the stream? Well, the stream basically needs to be the following. We need to get access to our database service and then access the actual method on it. So let's do that. So to do that, I am basically going to come to the top of my homepage state, and here I'm going to create a variable which is going to store a reference to our database service like so. Once that is done, I will then import the database service. And once I've imported it, I will come to the init state function, and here I'm going to basically do underscore database is equals to underscore get database service. Now that this is done, I'm just going to give a quick restart to my application and then come down. And now we can actually set the stream for our stream builder. So the stream here is going to be our database service, and then we're going to do get user profiles, and that's pretty much all we had to do. And then for the builder property, we basically just define a function that gets two parameters passed to it. You can hover over it and see as well. It's basically going to be a function that gets a build context and a snapshot. So let's do that. We're going to get the context passed to us as well as snapshot. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And then I can add the semicolon at the end. And now we can define how the stream builder is basically going to build our actual widget. So here what I'm going to do is basically first determine if we have information available to us that we can display to the user, or if we have an error occurring, or if we're currently fetching the information. So to do that, we're going to implement the following logic. Let's do the error first. So I'm going to do if the snapshot.hasError. So if that is the case, then what we're going to do is return the following widget, which is just going to be a const center with a child, which is going to text saying unable to load data. And then what I'm going to do is I have another if statement, and here what I'm going to do is the following. I'll do if the snapshot has data, if the snapshot has data, and the snapshot dot data is not equals to null, then what we are going to be doing? Well, then what we'll do is for now return a list view and not show anything else. And finally, the last thing that I'm going to do is, as default, I'm just going to return a center widget, which is going to have a circular progress indicator within it. So let me just quickly do that. So when we're loading, we'll just show this. When we have data, we'll show our list view. If we have an error, then we are going to be showing the text widget which says unable to load data. So let's restart our application, make sure that everything works as intended and we have no errors. So there we have it. We can restart our application, and as you can see on our home page, we are not getting any errors. So now we can actually take a look at if we are getting the data. So to do that, all I'll do is that within the builder function, I can basically print snapshot.data, and let's see if something gets printed to the console. So let's open up our console, and let's go to the debug console, and then let's restart our application. And if we come to the actual home page, you can see that it gives me an instance of with converter query snapshot. So with this, we can confirm we have access to the information, so we can move forwards to actually building the UI. To build the UI, our UI is going to look the following. We're just going to have a list view, and then that list view is going to have these different chat tiles within it, each corresponding to a single user. So what I'm going to be doing is creating another widget, and this is going to be a reusable widget, which is going to be a chat tile, which is going to have the information of the user being displayed. And this chat tile we're going to be using to actually then display these different tiles within our list view. So let's do that. So to do that, what I'll do is that basically I'll come to my widgets folder, and then within my widgets folder, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this chat_tile.dart, like so. Once this is done, then I will open up the actual chat tile file, and here I'm going to create a stateless class, and I'm going to call this chat tile like so, and do command save. And then here, instead of returning a placeholder, I'll return a list tile like so. And one last thing that I'm going to do is basically say that this chat tile is going to get a user profile passed to it. So I'll say we're going to have a final user profile property, and it's going to be called user profile. And then within the constructor, we're going to have a required named argument passed, which is going to be this .user profile like so. And then using this user profile, we can actually populate the different properties on our list tile. So firstly, what I'd like to do is basically set the dense property on the list tile to be false. And then what I'll do is that I'll set the leading property on the list tile to be a circle avatar. So the leading property on the actual list tile basically refers to the widget that's shown to the left of our actual title and subtitle. So this is what the leading property is. So I basically want to show the user's image here, so I'll do circle avatar, and then I'll set the background image property here to be the following, which will be the network image. And then we're basically going to access our user profile dot, and here we have access to our profile picture URL like so, and that's pretty much all we have to do. Once this is done, I'm also going to set the title property. So after the leading one has been defined, I'll do title, and the title is going to be a text widget. And here I'm going to do user profile dot, and then I am going to do name like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And do command save. And one last thing I want to do is basically get notified every time a tab occurs on this list tile. So I'll set the onTap property here to a function callback. And then what I'll do is basically say that we're going to pass in a function which is going to be on tab, and this will be called every time the actual list tile gets tapped. And this is also going to be a required named parameter like so. Then I'll set that when the user taps, we'll do on tap like so. And that's pretty much it. And let's do an anonymous function inline and then do on tap. And that's pretty much all we have to do. Alt-Shift-F command save. And there we have it. We have our chat tile created. So now we can use this within our home page. So let's close down the database service and the chat tile file. Let's come back to our home page. Let's come to the point where we have our chats list. Let's come to where we return our list view. And now instead of returning a list view, what I am going to be doing is returning a list view.builder. And the reason we're using list view.builder is because it's going to allow us to programmatically build our list view based upon the data that we get. It expects an item builder property. So this is basically a function that defines how each of the child within our list are built, and it's going to get two things. It's going to get a context passed to it. So this is the build context, as well as an index for the currently built child. And that's pretty much all we have to do. And once this is done, I'm also going to define the item count property on our builder. So it's going to be item count. So where do we get this item count from? Well, what we can do is basically create a variable, and this is going to be called users, and it's going to be equal to our snapshot.data and then .docs. And as you can see, this docs is basically going to be a list of query document snapshots. So how many documents we have corresponds to basically how many users we are going to show. So I'll take this list now, and for the item count, I'm going to do users.length. And that's pretty much all we have to do, and do command save. And now we can come to our item builder. Within my item builder, what I'm going to be doing is returning the chat tile. So let's do that. And then we need to give it the user profile as well as the onTap function callback. So let's do the following. Let's create a variable called user profile, and I am going to say that this is going to be called user, and it's going to be equal to the users list that we have, and then the index that gets passed to us like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And then on this, we have to call the data function like so. And once this is done, we can take the user profile and we can pass that here. And then for the onTap, we can just set an anonymous empty function for now, and then do Alt-Shift-F command save. And there we have it. We can see all of the 3 different users being shown to us. And when we click on them, we can see the tab gesture happening as well. So now all I like to do is just add some padding. So what I'm going to do is come to my chat tile. And here what I'm going to do is the following, where I'll do Control-Shift-R to refactor. I'm going to say that I'm going to wrap this with a padding widget. And I'm going to add the following padding, which is going to be to just add padding on the vertical axis. And there we have it. Now we have some spacing within our chat tiles. So that's pretty much it. Now we've implemented the functionality for actually showing a list of users to the users with whom they can have a chat with. And now the next step in the conversation is going to be how can we actually navigate to our chat page when we actually click on one of these users and start a chat with them. Before we can actually implement the logic for when a user clicks on one of these chat tiles and then they are navigated to a chat page, we need to understand how our chat's going to be represented within our database. So let's take a look at what the final representation of our chats are going to be within our database by looking at an already completed project, and then we can continue with building the application's logic. So if I come to Cloud Firestore and I see the Firestore database, you can see that what we're basically going to do in the final version of this application is have a chats collection, and our chats collection is basically going to contain different documents within it. Each document is going to pertain to a chat between 2 users, and it's going to have the following attributes. It'll have an ID, and this ID is going to be unique to every chat, and it's going to be generated by taking both the user's UID, the 2 users that are talking with each other, and then using that to generate this ID. And this ID is going to be generated by a function that we are going to create, and that function will ensure that whenever 2 users talk with each other, the generated chat ID always is the same, because it's going to depend on the 2 users' UIDs. And we'll talk about how that is going to work. Besides this, we're also going to have a property which is going to be participants, and this is basically going to be the participants within this chat, so the 2 users that are talking with each other. And finally, another property which is going to be messages, within which we're basically going to have a list of all of the different messages that the user sent, and each message is going to have the content of the message, the type of the message, the sender ID of the message to who sent the message, as well as what time was the message sent at. So that's basically how we're going to be structuring our database, and how each chat is going to be represented, and how our chats collection is going to look like. So with this done, I can actually minimize Cloud Firestore now, or the Firebase console I should say, and we can move onwards to building the logic within our application. So when the user actually clicks on one of these chat tiles, we're going to perform the following operations. Firstly, we are going to determine whether a chat already exists between the currently logged in user and the user that they want to talk with. If the chat exists, then what we'll do is that we'll skip the next part, and the next part is going to be that if the chat doesn't exist, then we'll create a chat for them. And if the chat exists, then we won't do this part. And then finally, we'll take them from our home page to the chat page so that they can talk with the actual user. And then the rest of the logic of actually pulling the messages and doing everything like that, that's the chat page's job, and it's going to handle that. So let's implement this functionality one by one. So firstly, we'll take a look at how can we determine whether a chat exists or not. Then we'll actually take a look at how we can create a chat between 2 users. And then we'll take a look at how we can navigate the user from our home page to the chat page when they actually click on one of these chat tiles. So to begin the process, you'll need access to the resources that I have mentioned within the link down in the description below. And basically, you're again going to come to the link that I've mentioned and come to my website. And now we need access to our message.dart file, which basically defines the schema of how a message is going to look within our application, and then also the chat.dart file. So let's create them. So let's come to our models file. Let's create a new file, and let's do chat.dart first. So let's do chat.dart. And once this is done, I'll basically copy all of this code and paste it in like so, and make sure that you remove the import statement at the top. We'll just fix this error in a bit. Then I will create a new file, and this time it's going to be called message.dart. And then once this is done, I will basically copy all of the code that pertains to the message.dart file, like so, paste it in, do command, save, and that's pretty much all we had to do. And then we can come to our chat.dart file and then basically import the model for message.dart, and that should pretty much fix the issue for us. So now we have a chat.dart file that creates a class called chat, and this chat mimics how a chat is going to look like within our database as well as our application. And the message.dart file basically shows the structure for how our message is going to be. So now that this is done, we can close down the chat.dart file as well as the message.dart file. And we can come back to our home_page.dart file, and we can actually start implementing the functionality for navigating the user when the tile actually gets clicked. So first things first, I'm going to come to my chat tile. I'm going to come to the onTap function. I'm going to mark that as async, and then I'll open up the function's body. And the first thing we have to do is basically determine if a chat between these two users exists. So how will we do that? Well, the logic for this is going to be the following. We'll basically come to our database, we'll come to our Firestore database, we'll go to our chats collection, which currently we do not have. So what I'll do is I'll show you the completed version of the application, and then we'll take a look at the documents and we'll try to find a document which is going to have a specific ID. If the document with that specific ID exists, then we know that a chat exists between these users. If it doesn't, then we know we need to create a chat. So that's pretty much what the logic is going to be. So let's minimize the page and let's actually start implementing this logic. What I'm going to do is put this logic within my database_service.dart file. So I'm going to come to my database_service.dart file and actually implement the function here. So how are we going to determine if a chat exists? Well, what I'll do is basically do the following. I'll say that I'll have a function which will return a future bool, and it's going to be called check chat exists. Then it's going to take in two parameters. The first is going to be the UID of the first user, and the second is going to be the UID of the second user. So it doesn't matter what UIDs we pass for UID 1 or 2, it just needs to be the currently logged in user and the other user that the user is talking with. I'll create this function body and I'll also mark this as async. Now we need to create the actual chat ID so that we can try to find if the document with this chat ID exists. And I'm going to make sure that this chat ID is going to be the same when the UID 1 or UID 2 given are basically the same. Doesn't matter if we switch the order of them. So to create this, what I'm going to do is basically come to my utils.dart function. And here what I'm going to do is basically create a function which will return a string, and it's going to be called generate chat ID. And it's going to take two named arguments. The first is going to be a required string, and it's going to be called UID1, and then it's going to be required string UID2. And then I'll open the actual function body. Then what I'm going to do is basically say that we're going to have a list. It's going to be of UIDs, and it's going to be equal to a new list which is going to have UID1 and UID2 within it. And then what I'll do is basically the following. I'll do string and then chat ID is equals to, and then I'll combine all of the values within this list into a single string. And to do that, I'll do UIDs.fold, and then the fold function basically takes in an initial value, it loops over the list, and to the initial value or the previous value, it keeps adding the next element. So we'll take the previous value, which is going to be the ID, and then the next value, which will be the next UID in our list, and I'm going to return a string where we're just going to take the ID and we're going to tag the UID to it like so, and do command save. And with this done, I can do return chat ID. But if I just leave the function like this, there's a crucial error within this function, and that is that depending upon the UID1 and the UID2 and which order we pass these UID, the actually generated chat ID can differ. For example, if for UID1 I pass in the authenticated user, so the currently logged in user's UID, and then for UID2 the actual user that they want to talk with, then the actual chat ID is going to be, let's just say 123, that's the UID of the first user, and then 456 for the second. But then if for UID1 I actually switch the roles and I send UID1 as the actual user that we want to talk with, so it'll be 456, and then the UID2 as the currently logged in user, so it'll be 123. So you can see that the UIDs are going to differ. So to fix this, what I'm going to be doing is before I actually fold the values, I'm going to do uids.sort, and this will sort the actual list, and this will ensure that regardless of whatever way we pass the UIDs for the two users, the chat ID that we get is always the same if the UIDs are the same. So let's do command save, and that's pretty much all we had to do. Now we can come back to our database_service.dart file, and here I can implement this function. So I'll say the chat ID is going to be equal to generate chat ID, pass in the UID1 and the UID2, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So now when this is done, we can basically reference our collection and then try to determine if this document with this chat ID exists. But currently we do not have access to our chat collection, so let's create that. So to do that, what I'll do is come to the top of my database service. I'll create a new variable here which will store a reference to our chats collection like so. And then within my database service setup collection references, I am basically going to do the following thing. I'll do chats collection is equal to, and then I'll do Firebase Firestore dot collections, and then the collection is going to be chats. And then I'm going to do the same logic that I've done before for the users collection, where I'm going to tack on a with converter here so that we can have strong type safety and ensure that the data that gets saved within the database and retrieved from the database conforms to a specific schema. So from Firestore, so this basically means when we are getting data from Firestore, what I'm going to be doing is the following. I'm basically going to get snapshots as well as a second argument that I want to ignore, and then I will basically do chat, which is the model that we're going to get from our chat.dart file. And then instead of using the default constructor on this, I am going to do chat dot from JSON, and I'm going to pass it the snapshots dot data like so, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So now that from Firestore has been defined, the next thing that I'm going to be defining is to Firestore. So for to Firestore, I'm going to do the following. I'll basically get the chat given to me, which is going to be this, and then I'll also get a second parameter which I will ignore, and then I will do the following, which is that I am going to return chat.toJSON like so, and that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. But for now it's going to give us an error, so what I'll do is on my with converter I'll define the type, which is going to be chat, and with this it should pretty much fix the error for us. So now that we have our chats collection defined, I can come back to my actual check chat exists function, and here I can do the following. I can say final result is equals to await underscore, and then I'm going to do chats collection dot document, and the document with the ID of chat ID dot get like so. That's what we're going to be doing. And then what I'm going to do is basically determine if the result is not null. So if the result is not equals to null, then what I'll do is return result dot exists like so. Otherwise, if we reach the end, I will do return false. And there we have it. That's pretty much it. And now we have our function defined. So let's restart our application, make sure that nothing's broken. And then we can come to our home_page.dart file and actually use this function. So to use this function, what we need to do is make sure that we have access to our data service, which we do. So we can come back, and then we can come to our chat tile, the onTap function, and here we can implement the logic. So the logic is going to be as follows. I will create a variable which is going to be called chat exists. It is going to be equal to await, and then I'll do database service dot and then check chat exists. And then we need to pass it the two different UIDs. So one needs to be the UID of the currently logged in user, which we can get by doing _auth service dot user dot UID. And for the second one, we're basically going to be taking the user profile and then passing that user's ID like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. So now that this is done, I'm going to add a print statement here. And this print statement is basically going to check to ensure that we get false printed for now, since we don't have any chats in the database. Open up our debug console and then restart our application. And now on the home page, when I click on one of these chat tiles, you can see that it prints false. So now that this is done, what we can do is actually move on to the next step, which is to, if the chat doesn't exist, then create a chat between these two users. So for that, we're going to do the following. First, I'll add an if clause, and I'm going to say if the chat doesn't exist. So this is what that basically means. Then what I'm going to do is basically create the chat. To create the chat, I need to create a function that's going to allow us to create a new chat. So I'm going to come to my database underscore service.dart file, and here I'm going to do the following. I'll say that I have a function that's going to return a future void, and it's going to be called create new chat. Then it's going to take the same arguments, which are going to be string UID1 and string UID2. So I'll copy and paste them in. It'll be async, and I'll open up the function's body. Within this, I'll firstly generate the chat ID. So this is going to be the same logic as check chat exists. And then what I'll do is that I will create a document reference. And the way we're going to do that is by following. We'll access our chats collection, and on that, we'll get the document. And this time we're going to say that we don't want to automatically generate the document's ID. We want the document's ID to be chat ID. And then following that, I am going to add the semicolon. And now we have access to a document reference. Then what I'll do is that I'll actually create a chat object. So to do that, I'll do final chat is equals to a chat object. And we need to give it the following parameters. We need to pass it the ID. So this is going to be the chat ID. We need to give it a list of participants. So this is going to be UID1 and UID2. And then for the list of messages, that's just going to be an empty list for now, since we're just creating a new chat. And then finally, once we have the chat created, I will do await. I will do my docref.set. And then I'm going to pass the chat here like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And we don't have to do anything else besides this, and do command save. The last thing that I'm going to be doing is basically changing the chats collection here to be an exclamation mark instead of the nullifier operator. And now we have removed the error and everything looks good. So now we have implemented the function that will allow us to create a new chat. So now let's do this. Let's restart our application, make sure that we have no errors. Let's come back to our home underscore page.dart file. And then let's do the following. If the chat doesn't exist, then we will do await. And then I will do underscore database service dot create new chat. And we can pass it the UID1 and 2. So this is going to be for the UID1, the auth.user.uid, and for UID2, the user.uid, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So let's just add the remaining semicolon, add the trailing commas so that we have good code formatting. Restart our application, open up Cloud Firestore, and within Cloud Firestore, ensure that for now we don't have a chats collection. So let's do the following. Let's restart our application. And let's do the following. We'll click on the chat tile for Leonardo DiCaprio, and I'm logged in as Keanu. So currently Keanu and Leo do not have a chat that exists between them. So if I click on this chat tile, you are going to see that the chat collection is going to appear in some time, hopefully. If I come to Firestore database, and there we have it. If I see I have chats within which I have a chat document, and now I have the chat's ID, the participants, as well as the messages, which is currently an empty list. So now if I restart the application, or let's just not restart it, if I click on the first chat tile again, you can see that nothing's going to happen, and we won't have multiple different chat documents being created. Since the chat ID is the same between two users, then it's not going to create a new document. But as soon as I click on, for example, George Clooney, since Keanu doesn't have a conversation with George Clooney, you're going to see that a new document is going to appear, and now it's going to have the participants listed, the ID, and the messages list is going to be empty. So the last thing we have to do is basically navigate the user from our home page to the chat page so that they can start chatting with the user. So how we're going to be doing that? Well, firstly, we got to create a chat page. So let's do that. So let's come to our pages, new file, chat underscore page.dart. And then what I'm going to do is do the following. I'm going to create a class which is going to be stateful. It's going to be called chat page. And then for now, let's do the following. Just return a scaffold instead of the placeholder. And do command save. And one thing I want to ensure is that when the chat page gets constructed, we pass to it the user profile for the user that we are currently chatting with. So to do that, I'll come to my stateful widget chat page. Here I'm going to create a final variable, which is going to be of type user profile. It's going to be called chat user, so the user that we are talking with. And then here for the chat page, I'm basically going to say that we're going to get a required named argument passed to it, which will be chat user like so, and do command save. So now what we can do is come back to our home_page.dart file. And once we have basically checked if the chat exists, and if it doesn't exist, created the chat, then we can safely navigate to our chat page. And then here we're going to do the following thing. We'll access our navigation service, and then we're going to call a function on it called push. But we currently don't have that, so let's create it. So let's go to our actual navigation service. And on my navigation service, I'm basically going to create a function that will allow us to go to a route, and we can give that route instead of using a named route. So to do that, I will create a function which is going to return void. It's going to be called push, and it's going to get a material page route passed to it, which will be called route, and we'll basically navigate to this route. And to navigate to this route, I'll do navigator key dot current state dot push, and here we're basically going to pass the route and do command save. Now that this is done, we can come back to our home_page.dart file, and on here we can call the function that is going to navigate us to the chat page. So I'm going to do navigation service.push, and we have to give it a route. So we're going to create material page route, and then we're basically going to define the builder here. And the reason we're using a material page route here and not a named route is because when we create our chat page, we need to pass it the user profile. So doing this way, we'll be able to achieve that. And then for the builder function, we basically have a function that gets the context passed to it and then defines how the route is going to be built. And we'll basically return a chat page like so. And then the chat user is basically going to be the user. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And we can add the trailing commas, Alt-Shift-F, command save, and we're ready to test this logic. So let's click on one of these chat tiles. Let's do Leonardo DiCaprio. And there we have it. We're navigated to our chat page. And now we can start working on our chat page. So for now, all I'm going to do is just quickly add an app bar to the chat page so that we can actually see the user that we're chatting with. So to do that, let's come to our chat_page.dart. Let's come to our scaffold. Let's define the app bar property on it and set the app bar to be app bar like so. And then here, what I'm going to do is set the title to be the following, which is going to be text. And I'm going to do widget.chatUser.name. And that's pretty much all we had to do. Alt-Shift-F, command save, and there we go. We can see the app bar, we can see the user that we're talking with, and since we're using the navigation stack, we have the ability to go back as it automatically shows that button to us on the app bar. So now we can add to the scaffold the body attribute, which is going to be a call to function called buildUI, like so. And then what I will do is basically here say that we will return a widget from this function. The function will be called buildUI. Let's just return a container and let's do command save and make sure that our application is working and it's working as intended and that there are no issues. And then we can actually take a look at how we can build our actual chat UI. To build the chat UI on our chat page, we're going to be using a package known as -chat. So we, in the previous steps of our video, had already included this package as a dependency within our pubspec.yaml file. So as you can see underneath the pubspec.yaml, we have -chat_2. And what this package is going to allow us to do, as the name suggests, or as the definition shows, that it's the most complete chat UI for Flutter. So we're going to be using this to actually create the chat UI within our chat page. And this is going to make it very easy for us to create a fully functional responsive chat UI. So let's minimize the screen and let's actually take a look at how are we going to be implementing -chat_2 package. So to get started, I'll come to my chat_page.dart file, and on the list I'll select one of the users that I want to have a chat with. So let's do Leo. And then as you can see, for now, we're just returning a container for the buildUI function. So let's remove the container, and instead of this, let's do chat and then add it. And it's going to expect us to pass it a bunch of different parameters. The first is going to be the current user. So this is basically the user that's currently logged into the application, and we're going to be using this to differentiate between the messages that the user sends and the messages that the other user sends. So -chat needs to know what the current user is. So if you see, it basically tells us that it needs to be a chat user and it's required. So let's create it. So to create it, what I'll do is that I'll come to my chat page state at the top. And here I'm going to create a chat user variable, and I'm going to create two, and they're going to be optional. First will be the current user, and this basically refers to the user that's currently logged in, and the other one will be the other user, so the user that we're talking with. Once this is done, then what I'll do is that I will create the init state function on this class, And once the superclass's init state has been called, then I'll do the following. I'll set the current user to be equal to, and then we'll do chat user. And then we have to basically provide an ID. So where do we get this ID from? Well, the current user is the currently logged in user, so we need to get access to our authentication service. So let's go to the top again and let's create a variable that will store a reference to our auth service like so. And now that this is done within init state, I am going to do getIt.get, but that means I also need a reference to our getIt instance. So let me do that quickly as well and import getIt. And then within init state, I can do underscore auth service is equals to, and then getIt.get auth service. And then using this, I can do auth service dot user dot UID. And that's pretty much all we had to do. But besides this, I also want to tell the name for the user. So I'll say first name is going to be the auth service dot user, and then I'm going to do dot display name like so, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So we're creating a chat user, I'm setting that to the current user, and we're giving the ID and the first name for that user, and this is the information that then dash chat is going to use to display the user's name, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So now that this is done, what I'm going to be doing is also creating the other user's chat user. So to do that, I'll do other user is equals to, and then we'll do chat user. And then here we need to give the ID. So if you remember, when we create the chat page, we pass the other user's user profile. So we can use that here by doing widget dot and then chat user dot, and then we can do the UID. Similarly for the first name, it's going to be widget and then dot chat user, and then I'm going to do dot, and from here we can do the name, and that's pretty much all we had to do. Now it's going to give me an error for the ID, and it says that the ID is required and needs to be a string. So what's the issue here? Well, I just need to add an exclamation mark here, and that should fix the issue. And then finally, for the other user that we're talking with, within dash chat, I'd like to display the actual picture of the user like so. So the messages we send, we do not show our picture, but for the messages that we get from the user, we want to see their picture. So the other user that you're talking with. So for that, what I'll do is that on this chat user, I'll basically set the profile picture property, and I'm going to set that to our widget.chat user. And then from here, we can do PFP URL. And that's pretty much all we had to do. Now I can do command save, and I can come back to the dash chat, and here I can set the current user to be current user and add an exclamation mark. For the onSend function, what I'm going to do for now is basically say that nothing's going to happen when onSend is called. So to do that, let's just add an empty anonymous function, and onSend is going to pass us a chat message. So let's say that we're going to get a message passed to us. And then for the messages list, so this basically refers to the list of messages that it needs to display on the UI. Let's just keep that an empty list for now, and then slowly we'll build the actual logic and do command save. And now we're going to get an error, but it's totally expected. Just restart your application and then go to the chat tile, click on one of them, and there we go. We can actually see the UI. It might be difficult for you to see, but at the very bottom, you can see that now we have this text box appearing under which we can actually click and then write a message, and then we can send this message. But it wouldn't work for now since we haven't implemented what happens when onSend is called. So we'll do that, but for now you can see that we can see what's going on. So the next thing I'd like to do is just change some properties on the dash chat widget just to make it a bit more nicer to see. So to do that, I'll set the message options, and I'm going to do the following. I'll set that to be message options. And then here what I'm going to do is basically show other user avatar. So show other user avatar to true, and then do command save. Besides this, I also want to show the time that the messages are sent at. So let's do true on that. And then finally, I'll do command save, and that's pretty much all we had to do. And finally, the last thing that I'm going to do is that I am going to set the input options. And what I'm going to do is make sure that whenever the user clicks on this input, that we can see the send a message button here. So to do that, I will come here and say input options. And then I'm going to do the following, which is always show send. And I'm going to set that to true for now. And I'll shift F command save. And then we can always see the send button here. So what's basically going to happen now is when we click here and we input some text within this field. So hello, for example. And when we do send, by clicking here, it's basically going to run this function on send, and then we can do whatever logic we need to do to persist this information within our database. So hopefully that makes sense. So what I am going to be doing now is firstly showing you the logic of sending text messages. And then once we have some text messages in an actual chat, then we'll take a logic at how to render these messages. And then after that, we'll take a look at sending media messages such as images. So for now, let's firstly take a look at how we can send just normal text messages. So the process is going to be as follows. Firstly, we're going to have the onSend callback send us a message, and this message will contain information about whatever the user types here. And then we're going to perform our own operation on the database to save this information within the chat that we're currently in. So hopefully that makes sense. So to get started with this, what I'll do is that I'll say that I'll create a function which will be future void underscore send message will be the name of this actual function. It's going to take a chat message as its input. I'm going to call it message. It will be asynchronous, and then I'll open up the function's body. Then where it says on send on dash chat, I'm basically going to set that to send message. And now basically every time we click send here, it's going to run the send message function. Within the send message function, I'll create a message, and this is going to be the message class that comes from the message.dart file that we've created. And I'm going to say that this is going to be a variable which is going to be message, and it's going to be equal to message like so. And then we need to give this message a sender ID, some content, the message type, as well as the time that the message was sent at. So let's do that. So what is the sender ID going to be? Well, the sender ID is basically going to be the current user's ID. So I'll do current user.id. Then we also need to have the content. So the content will be just the message, and then from there we'll have the text property on it. And I can see that here I can call this chat message instead of just message, and then we can do chat message.text. And the message type for now is going to be message type.text. And this is an enum that I've created within the message.dart file for the different types of messages we support. So we have text and image. And when we basically convert a message to JSON, then it takes this message type enum and then converts it to a string representation and then returns the JSON. And whenever we need to construct a message from a JSON object, then it takes a look at the message type that's in the JSON, and from that determines what the enum value should be. So hopefully that makes sense. And then finally, we can actually add the timestamp at which the message was sent. So to do that, I'll do timestamp, and then I'm going to do from date. And here we're basically going to do chat message dot, and on that we're going to have a created at datetime object, and that's what we're going to be using. So this timestamp class comes from actually Cloud Firestore, and we do convert the chat messages created at datetime object to a timestamp object so that we can save this timestamp within our database. Now, before we can do anything else, we actually need to create a function on our database service that is going to allow us to add new messages to an existing chat. So let's come to our database service and let's take a look at how we can do this. To do this, I will firstly create a function, and I'll say that this function will return future void, and it's going to be called send chat message. Once this is done, I'm going to say that this function is going to take in three things. It's going to take UID1, UID2, and it's also going to take in a message. And this message class comes from message.dart. Then I'll mark this function as async and open up its body. Firstly, we need to generate the chat ID, so the logic for that is going to be the same, so I'll just copy and paste that in. And after that, we basically need to get a reference to our document. So for that, I'll do the following, which is final docref, and then it's going to be chat collection dot the document with the chat ID. Now what we need to do is, if we look at our actual Cloud Firestore data store, is that we have chats under which we have these documents, and within each document, we have a list of messages. So I want to take the message that the user sends and append that to this messages list. So how can we do that? And in Firestore, it's called arrays. I just wanted to clarify that. The way we're going to be doing this is as follows. I will do await, and then I will do docref, and then I will do update. And here we need to basically specify the data which we want to update. So I basically want to append to the messages array my new message. So what I'm going to do is basically say that on my messages list, or array I should say, I'm going to do the following operation, which is going to be field value dot array union, like so. And then within this, I am basically going to say that I'm going to send my message like so. And the message is going to be message.toJSON. And there we have it. That's pretty much all we had to do. So what we're basically telling Firestore is that, hey, I want you to update the chat document with this chat ID, and I want you to go to the messages array, and I want you to take the existing array and merge with it this array that I passed, so this list, which only contains one message within it, so it's basically adding the message to the actual array. And that's all we had to do. So now with this done, we can come back to our chat page and we can actually get access to our database provider, or database service I should say, and then we can use that to actually send a message. So let's come to the very top of our class and let's create a variable that will store a reference to our database service. And then I will say that this is going to be imported from services, database service. Then within init state, what I'll do is basically set the underscore database service equals to get database service. Then I'll restart the application just to make sure that everything's working as intended and that nothing breaks. And then I can come to the very bottom to my send message function, and here we can actually implement the logic for sending the message. So to send the message, it's going to be as follows. We'll do await underscore database service dot and send chat message, and here we need to send the UID1, UID2 and message. So the UID1 will be the current user's ID, like so, and then the UID2 is basically going to be the other user and then their ID, and then finally the message is just going to be the message that we have constructed in the previous step, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So now with this done, we can do command save and actually test this. So I'll restart my application. I'll open up the Cloud Firestore database browser here, and let's click on one of these chats, and hopefully in one of these chats a new message should appear. So I'm going to say, hi, how's it going? And then I'm going to do send. And as you can see on this chat, the message appeared under the messages array, and there we go. We can see that the content is hi, how's it going? The message type is text, the sender ID is the following, and the sent at time is the following. So that's great. That means that we are able to now send messages. So now we can actually take a look at how can we display the messages that we are sending. So to do that, what we basically need to do is create a function first on our database service that will allow us to read data from this document and then get notified about updates that happen on this document. And then we can actually take a look at how we can display that information. So let's come to our database service and let's see what we have to do. So on my database service, what basically I have to do is create a function that is going to allow me to get the chat data in the format of a stream. And the reason we're going to be using a stream so that whenever the document gets updated in Cloud Firestore, we get updates of that through the stream, and then we can consume the stream and show the messages coming in real time. So what I'll be doing now is basically saying that I'll create a new function within this class. It's going to return a stream. I'm going to say that's going to be called getChatData. It's going to get two parameters passed to it. It's going to be string UID1, string UID2. And then I will open up the function body. Firstly, we need to determine what the chat ID is. So the logic for that is going to be the same. So let's do that. And after that, I'm going to do the following, which is to return the actual chats collection dot document with the ID of chat ID. And then on this, I can do dot snapshots like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And one final thing I'll do is basically say that I'm going to cast this as a stream of document snapshot where the actual document is going to be chat like so, and do command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do. I can also add a question mark here, so the null over access operator, and then I can also update the return type for this function to be the following and do command save. And now we have a function that's going to return a stream to us that we can consume to get the chat data. So now we can come back to our chat page and try to implement this here. So how are we going to be doing this? Well, the keen among you would have noticed that we are going to be using a stream builder again, because that's the widget we can use to actually consume our streams. So let's do that. So within build UI, now what I'm going to be doing is basically copying all of this code and removing it. Then what I'll do is that I'll say that now we are going to return a stream builder. Then for the stream, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set that to database service.getChatData. And here the UID1 is going to be the current user ID, like so. And then the UID2 is going to be the other user's ID. And then for the builder function, I'm basically going to say that we're going to get a context and snapshot passed to me. And then I can define what happens or how this actual stream builder constructs our widget. Within this, I'm going to do the following, which is to just return the same dash chat instance we had created previously, and then add the trailing commas and do command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now the next step in this process is going to be to extract the messages from the snapshot. So let's do that. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll create a variable chat optional. I'll call this chat, and I need to basically import this model from the model/chat.dart file. And then after this, I'm going to set this variable equal to snapshot.data. And then I'm going to do the data function on that, like so. That's pretty much all we had to do. And then what I'm going to do is basically create a list of chat message. So this chat message class is basically going to come from -chat2. So what we need to do is take our messages, which are in the form of message class, and basically transform them into chat message objects so that -chat can actually display them. So I'll create a list of chat message. I'll set those two messages, and I'll set that to be an empty list for now. And then what I'll do is that I'll set the messages list on -chat to be this messages list now. And do command save, and hopefully nothing should break now. So now what we need to do is that we need to access the messages on our chat and convert them into chat message objects instead of the message objects that we have. So how can we do that? Well, to do that, I'll do the following. Firstly, what I'll do is that I'll say that if the chat is not equals to null, and that the chat dot, and then I will do messages are not equals to null. So if that is the case, if the chat isn't null and the chat.messages are not null, then what I'll do is that I'll set the messages list equal to, and then a return from a function, which is basically going to transform our messages from message objects to chat message objects. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll come to the bottom, and here what I'll do is that I'll say that this function is going to return a list of chat message, and it's going to be called _generate chat messages list. And it's basically going to take in a list of message, which I'm going to call messages. And then I'll open up the body here. What I'm going to do is the following. I'll create a list of chat message. I'm going to call this chat messages, and I'm going to set that equal to our messages list dot map. So we'll basically loop over all of the elements that are within our messages list, and then convert them into chat message objects, and then return that. So to do that, it's going to be the following. I'll do messages.map, and then we're going to do a message, and it's basically going to then do the following within the function, which is as follows. We will return a chat message, like so, where we have to basically provide the user and the time that the message was created at. And then finally, once the map process has been done, it's going to return an iterable. So I'll cast that to a list. And now we can actually take a look at how to take this message and convert that into a chat message. So what is the user going to be? Well, the user depends on the sender ID. So if I take you back to the database, you can see that every message is going to have a sender ID. So the user here depends. If the actual message ID matches with the actual ID of the currently logged in user, then the user is going to be the current user, otherwise they will be the other user. So how do we do that? Well, what I'll do is I'll do the following. I'll say if the message.sender ID is equal to the current user, and then I will do .id. Then what we'll do is that we'll set the user to be the current user. Otherwise, we're going to set that to be the other user. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And then I will add an exclamation mark at the end. And then what is the created at time going to be? So it's going to be the message that we get. On that, we're going to have the sent at property, and then it's going to be to date. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And now what I can do is basically Alt-Shift-F, Command Save. And then what I can do is actually at the very end of this function say that we will return the chat messages like so. Then what I'll do is I'll take this function and I'll come to where I have the actual messages being set to something, And here what I'm going to do is basically say that the messages are going to be equal to the return from the underscore generate chat messages list function. And here we need to pass our messages. So that's going to be chat.messages like so. That's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. So now that this is done, what I can do is basically add some more properties to this chat message so that they're displayed properly here. You might not be able to see, but we're suddenly seeing this time appearing. So this pretty much tells us that some kind of data is showing up in the chat view. We're just not able to see it. And the reason for that is because we haven't populated our chat message with all of the information it needs. So the next thing is going to be to add the text to this chat message as well. So to do that, I'll basically say that the text is going to be m dot, and then it's going to be content. And if I do command save, as soon as I do this, you're going to see that the chat message appears and it's saying, hi, how's it going? And it's in blue because this is the message that we had sent. And that's why it's appearing like this. If the other user had sent the message, then it would appear a little bit different, and we'll take a look at how that looks on later on. So now let's try to see if we send another message and if it works. So I'll say, did you hear about my new movie that's coming out? Like so, and send it. And as soon as we send, you can see that the message gets shown. But now you're going to see an issue, and the issue is that the actual messages are not being sorted in the order of the time at which they are sent. So how can we fix that? Well, to fix it, what I'll do is that I'll come to underscore generate chat messages list. And once we've looped over all of the messages and converted them into chat messages, then what I'll do is that I'll sort the chat messages list. So to do that, I'll do chat messages dot sort. And then here I'm going to do the following. So the sort function works like this. It sends us two elements that it wants to compare to determine which one is bigger than the other one. So A and B, we call them, and then we basically define some kind of a criteria to determine if A is bigger than B or if B is bigger than A. So I'm going to do return, and it's going to be the following, which is b.created@compare to a.created@ time. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now it's automatically going to sort the list according to time. And as you can see, now it is fixed. So now it's saying, hi, how's it going? Which was sent at 1910. And then at 1920, did you hear about my new movie that's coming out? So that's great. Now we can see all of these messages that are being sent by the user, and everything looks great. So now what we can actually take a look at is how can we send media messages to the user. So to send media messages, we'll have to firstly implement some kind of a button that the user can actually click on and then access their gallery. From there, they can select the actual image that they want to send. And then we need to modify some of the functions for sending the message and retrieving the messages so that all of the logic works as intended. So let's actually take a look at how we can do this. So to get started, the first thing that I'm going to be doing is coming back to dash chat. On dash chat, what I'm going to be doing is coming to the input options property. And here I'm basically going to set the trailing property to be a list. And this list is going to contain a widget, which is going to be our media message button. And this function hasn't been created yet, so let's create it. So I'll copy this function's name and let's do underscore. And then I'll come to the very bottom. And here I'm going to say that we will have a function that returns a widget. It's called underscore media message button. It doesn't take anything. And then I will open up its body. And here I'll do the following, which is just return an icon button for now, where onPressed is currently an empty anonymous function. And the icon is going to be the following. Let me just copy and paste that in like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So the icon is going to be icons.image, and the color for that is going to be the primary color of the color scheme. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now let's see what the issue here is. I just need to remove the const keyword here. And now we can see this actual button appearing, which we can click to actually access our gallery, select an image from there, and then send that to the user. So how are we going to be doing that? Well, firstly, we need to get an image from the gallery. So that's pretty easy. We already have the function implementing on our media service. So we need to get access to our media service. So what I'll do is that I'll come to the top of my class, and here I'll create a variable that stores reference to our media service. I'll also import the media service like so. Then what I'll do within init state is basically copy and paste in the code for getting the media service using getIt, do command save, and restart our application. Once the application is restarted, I'll just basically navigate back to the existing chat that I was having. And then now we can actually implement the logic for actually sending a media message. So I'll come to my media message button function, and when it gets pressed, I'll do the following. I'll do the media service dot, and then I'm going to do get image from gallery, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. Besides this, we just need to basically create a variable within which we'll store the file that the user selects and set that equal to the following. And then also mark this as async and import the file object from .io and do command save. So now we can test it. Let's click on the button, opens up the actual gallery. We can select one of the images, and there we have it. That's done. So now the next thing we have to do is upload this file to Cloud Firestore. And then once this file is uploaded, we'll get the download URL. Then once we have that download URL, we can send a message using that download URL. So it might sound a little bit confusing, but just hold on and you're going to understand everything that pertains to sending a media message. So the next thing I need to do is basically check if the actual file that was selected by the user is not null. So let's do file not equals to null. And then within this if clause, we can actually start uploading the image. So what I'm going to be doing to upload the image is firstly come back to my actual storage service. And then within the storage service, I'm going to create a function that's going to allow us to upload actual files that pertain to a specific chat and put them within Firebase Storage. So how can we do that? Well, what I basically want to do, and I'll open up the actual Firebase console for that, is on my storage bucket, I basically want to create a new folder, which is going to be chats. Underneath of chats, we're going to have folders for each of the different chats, and these folders are going to be corresponding to those chats ID, within which we're basically going to be then saving all of the files that are sent within a specific chat. So to do that, the logic is pretty much going to be kind of similar to what we had done before. What I'm going to do is say that we are going to have the function return a future string optional, and it's going to be called upload image to chat, like so. Then I will open up the actual parameters for this and say that we're going to have some named arguments that are going to be passed. The first is going to be required file, and the other one is going to be a required string, and then I will do chat ID. And that's pretty much all we had to do. Then I'll mark this function as async and open up the function's body and do command save. Within this, firstly, we need to create a file reference. So I'll do reference, and then I will do file ref is equals to, and we will do Firebase Storage dot, and here we're going to do ref, and then we're going to do chats slash, and then we basically want to have a folder which corresponds to the chat ID. So I'll interpolate that by doing $ chat ID. And then within this folder, we'll have a child, and this child is basically going to be the name of the file that we want to save. So what is the name of the file going to be? Well, what I'll do is to make sure that all of the file names are unique is basically take the timestamp at which the actual message is sent at, and then basically use that as the name of the file plus whatever the extension of the file is. So how can we do that? Well, to do that, I will say that firstly, let's create the actual timestamp part, and then we'll take a look at the extension. I'll take date time now, and then I'll convert that to a ISO 8601 string. And that's pretty much all we had to do, and do command save. And after this is done, then I will tack on the actual extension of the file that the user selects. So for that, we'll do what we had done before, where we're going to do p.extension. And to this, we will basically pass the file.path. And that's pretty much all we had to do. With this done, we have now basically created a file name, which is going to be a ISO 8601 string of a timestamp. Following that, we'll have the extension of the file that the user has selected. And this is going to be saved within chat slash whatever the folder name is, which is going to correspond to the chat ID, and do command save. Then the logic is pretty much going to be the same. What we'll do is firstly create an upload task, which we had done before when we were uploading the user profile pictures. Call it task and set it equal to file ref dot put. And here I'm going to do file and pass it the file. And then after this, the return is going to be the same as before. So I'll just copy it from our upload user PFP function and paste it here, because it's just going to make sure that the task state is success and then return the download URL to us. And we can do command save. We can come back to our chat underscore page.dart file and see what we have to do here. So if the file is not equals to null, then what we can do is basically access our storage service and then call the function on that to upload the image. So we need access to our storage service now. So let's come to the top of our class and actually create a variable that stores a reference to that. So let's do late storage service is equals underscore storage service, like so. Then we have to do the same thing that we've done like a bazillion times by now in this video, which is underscore get storage service. Let's restart our application, make sure that nothing's broken, and then we can come back to our media message button. So if the file is not equals to null, then what I want to do is basically access my storage service, and on that I basically want to call the function upload image to chat, and we need to pass it the file, which we already have, and then we also need to pass it the chat ID. The chat ID logic is pretty much going to be the same. We're just going to use the generate chat ID function. So I'll just copy and paste that in, add the semicolon here, do command save, and I'm also going to do await storage service.upload image to chat, and then I will basically save the return value from this into a variable, which is going to be string optional called the download URL, like so, and do command save. So that's pretty much all we had to do. So now before we test this, what we can do is actually implement the rest of the logic for sending the message, just so that we can test everything at once. So to do that, it's going to be the following. Once the file has been uploaded, I'll say if the download URL is not equals to null, then we can do the final step in the process. What is that going to be? Well, firstly, we need to create a message, and then we need to send that. So let's create a chat message, and we're going to take this chat message, and then we're going to basically send it to the send message function, which will then take care of actually doing the actual sending of the message. So let's create a chat message. So I'll create a chat message, and I'll say this is going to be called chat message, and it's going to be equal to chat message, like so. Here we basically need to define the user, so who's sending the actual chat message. It's going to be the current user. The created at timestamp, so it's going to be datetime.now, like so. And then after that, we're going to set the media's list, which is going to be a list of chat media, to include the file that we had just uploaded. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll create an empty list within which I am going to add a chat media object. It requires a URL, a file name, and a type. The file name is just going to be an empty string, and the reason for that is because I don't want to display the file name. The type is going to be media type.image, like so, and then the URL here is going to be the download URL. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So Alt-Shift-F command save. And then the final thing we can do is basically, once we've defined our chat message, is to call the underscore send message function and pass it the chat message. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now within our send message function, what we're basically going to do is get that chat message. And right now we're not differentiating between the messages that are text-based messages and the messages that are media-based messages. So we need to create some kind of a mechanism that can allow us to differentiate between the chat message that we get and whether that's a media-based message or a text-based message. So to do that, it's going to be the following logic. I'll do if the chat message dot media's list is not empty, and if this returns null, then it'll be default false. Then we'll do something. Else what we'll do is just default to assuming that it's a text message and do the logic that we were doing before within this else clause. Otherwise, the logic is going to change a bit. We'll still create a message, but this message is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a message with the message type of image. So what I'll do for now is that I'll say if the chat message dot medias, and then I'll do the first dot type is equal to media type and then dot image. And I'm doing this check to ensure that even if the user selects a file that's not an image, then we don't send a message, since we don't have an ability right now to display anything else besides text and image-based message. So if the chat message that we get, the media's list in it, the first element within it, the type of that is media type.image, then we're going to create a message, and I'm going to call this message like so. I'm going to set that equal to message. And here we're basically going to set the sender ID to be the chat message dot, and then I'm going to do user.id. There we have it. The content is going to be chat message dot medias, and then here I'm going to take the first element and I'm going to get its URL. Then the message type is going to be message type dot image, And what's the sent at time going to be? Well, it's just going to be timestamp dot from date, and then it's going to be the chat message dot created at. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now we've constructed a message, and this is going to be a message type of image. So what we can do is do the same thing, which is await database service dot send chat message, and then send the message. So the UID1 is going to be the current user's UID. The UID2 is going to be the other user's UID. And then the message is just going to be this message that we had created. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So let's do command save. Let's restart our application, and let's test if all of the logic is working. So I'm going to come to the existing chat, click on the actual image icon button, select one of these, and then hopefully in some time we should see a new message appearing. And there we go. We can see the new message appearing, but it's actually showing it to us as a text, and we can see the actual download URL being displayed here. So now we basically need to update the logic within our generate chat messages list to basically differentiate between these two different message types and then generate the appropriate chat message. So that's going to be fairly simple. It's not going to be anything too complicated. What I'm going to be doing is that I'll come back to the point where we're mapping through all of our messages. And here I'm going to add an if statement where I'm going to do if the m.message type is going to be equal to message type, and then I'm going to do dot, and here we can do image, then we're going to do something. Otherwise, we'll just default to assuming that a message is a text message. So within the else block, we'll just do the same thing that we were doing before. And then within this if, I'm going to do return chat message like so. So now we need to define the user. So the user logic is going to be the same. So I'll just copy and paste that in. It's basically the same logic. So if the user sender ID is the same as the currently logged in user's ID, then that means that this chat message was sent by our user. And then the created at logic is going to be the same as well. It's going to be m.sent at to date. So let me copy and paste that in like so. What's going to differ is the actual content that this chat message has. So instead of populating the text property, what we're going to be doing is populating the media property on this. So I'm going to do medias is a list, and there's going to be only one element between this list, which is going to be chat media, and the URL here is going to be the m.content. So why is it m.content? Well, if we go back to our Firebase console to the database, you are going to see once the database actually loads that when we send a image message, then the content is basically the actual download URL for the image. And if you take a look at the storage, you can actually see that now we have chats within which we have folders corresponding to the chat IDs, within which we're storing these files, where we have the timestamp, as you can see, and then the actual extension of the file. So everything looks great. We are building a very powerful application. The file name is just going to be an empty string, and the type here is going to be image. So let's see what it expects. It expects it to be a media type, so it'll be media type.image, and that's pretty much all we had to do. Alt-Shift-F and Command save, and that should pretty much fix the issue for us. So now text messages are being displayed as text messages, and media messages are being displayed as images. It's working as intended, and everything seems to work great. So now what I'm going to be doing is basically opening up another simulator and then trying to test if the back and forth conversations are working as we had intended, because basically we've implemented all of the functionality. So now that's left is to just actually test if everything works like we wanted it to. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll stop running this application on this simulator, but before that I'll spin up another simulator, and to test out what we can do is that we can start an iOS simulator. And then on the iOS simulator, what I'm going to do is come here and select within Visual Studio Code the iPhone 15 Pro Max to be the new target where I want to run my application, and then start debugging the application. So now I'll wait for the application to build, and then I will resume the video, and if any errors occur by any chance, I'll show those to you as well as how to fix them. Welcome back everybody. So now that the application is running on iOS simulator, as well as an instance of it is also running on an Android simulator, what I can do is test the chat functionality thoroughly and see if everything works as intended. On the Android side of things, I've logged in as Keanu and I'm going to be talking with Leonardo DiCaprio, and here's the chat history as of now. And on the iOS side of things, I am going to log in as Leo, so Leonardo DiCaprio, and then I'm going to talk with Keanu, that's logged in on the Android device. So there we have it. There we go. I'm logged in. I'll select Keanu. But before that, let's see George Clooney. As you can see, if I click on George Clooney, it takes me to the chat UI and there are no messages, so I'm not seeing anything and I can start sending messages. But I will come back and go to Keanu. And as you can see on this side, I can see the name of Keanu. I can also see the messages that I got from them and at what time did they come from. So I'm going to be like, hey man, long time no see. Like so, and then I'm going to do send. And as soon as I do that, you can see that here it's showing the opposite. So it's showing that Leonardo DiCaprio sent me a message. And then I can say, I have no idea about the movie you are talking about. And then I'm going to do, I've been on vacation for a long time. And then I'm going to do send. And as you can see, the messages show up instantly with the power of Cloud Firestore. I'm going to do check this out. And then I am going to send that and then also send a message. So the application crashed, and that's a good thing. And I believe the reason for that is because we didn't ask for the appropriate permissions when it comes to actually accessing the gallery on our actual iOS simulator on an iOS device. So let's quickly fix that. So to fix the issue, we're going to be doing the following thing. We're going to come to our image picker pub.dev page. And here we're basically going to come to the point where it says setup for iOS. And as I can see, it says that we need to add these 3 different usage descriptions to our info.plist file. So let's do that. So to do that, I'll come to iOS runner, and then there's going to be info.plist. And then I'm going to do the following. I'll basically copy this key string pair. I'll paste it 3 times. And then I will set the first to be ns photo library description, like so. Then the second one is going to be ns camera usage description, like so. And then finally ns microphone usage description, like so, and add that here. And then here I'm going to change the strings to be need access to photo library, like so. And then I'll do the same thing here, need access to camera. So let me do that, need access to camera. And then I am going to do need access to microphone. You need to make them a bit more detailed if you actually want to submit this app for review and actually get it published. But for testing purposes, it should suffice. So now that this is done, I'll stop running my application. I'll minimize Google Chrome. I will select the iOS simulator, put this to one side, select that as the target, start debugging the application, and hopefully this time when we try to send immediate messages, it should resolve and it should not crash. Welcome back everybody. So let's test to see if this actually works. If I click on the button, it says me that the app wants to access the gallery. I'm going to do allow full access. There we go. We can see the photo gallery popping up. I'm going to send the following image. And with this done, let's see if the image actually gets sent. I'm also going to open the app in the Android simulator, go to the Leonardo DiCaprio chat. And as you can see, it shows me that Leo has sent me this image. So with that, that's pretty much it. This means that everything's working as intended. So now one last thing I'd like to do is test the functionality of just starting a brand new chat. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll log out on the Android simulator and I'll try to log in as George. So let's do George at test.com and then test 1, 2, 3 exclamation mark. So on the Android side of things, now I'm logged at George Clooney, and on the iOS simulator, I am logged as Leonardo DiCaprio. So here I'm going to select Leonardo DiCaprio. Here I'll select George Clooney. And let's see if I send a message, does it show up? So hi, how's it going? Send the message. And hopefully it should show up. There we go. It's showing up. And now if I send a media message, hopefully that gets shown as well. And then here I can respond to the message as well as soon as I receive it. Yeah, there we go. We've received the message. Whoa, looks awesome. Where is this place? And then I can send the message. And there we have it. The conversation is flowing both ways. So with that, that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and learned a thing or two about Flutter and Firebase. As always, if you enjoyed the video, then please don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to my channel so that you get notified every time I release new videos. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, keep learning, keep going, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.